Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting this afternoon. Called us to order here at 1 o'clock. And we'll begin with our land acknowledgement, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Forder to read it for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor. And now I just ask you to join me in a moment of silent reflection as we think about our agenda for today. Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest around the horseshoe? I see none. If any should arise, just make us aware. And I'd like to welcome our people in the audience today. And thankfully, we do have enough chairs for everybody this time. Sometimes we have enough angry people that we we have more or no room for chairs. And I just say here, and I'll pass it right to you, Rob, for announcements. I just say we have amended our agenda today slightly to provide an opportunity for members of council to get up to date on the declaration of emergency. And speaking of that, Rob is right in the heart and center of our emergency control group. So, Rob.
Actually, Your Worship, I'm not going to speak about the emergency under this general announcements. We'll leave that to the separate item on the council agenda. What I do like to announce, though, is that from May 28th through to June 3rd, the municipality will be marking National Accessibility Week. This is a week dedicated to the celebration and inclusion of people of all abilities. On Tuesday, May 30th at 1 p.m., yoga instructor Paula Steppen will be leading a chair yoga class at the Meaford and St. Vincent Community Center. The class is being offered at no cost and persons of all abilities are welcome, but pre-registration is required as space is limited. On Thursday, June the 1st, in honor of Accessibility Week, we will be showcasing a documentary at the Meaford Public Library at 2 p.m. in the Friends of Meaford Library room with The Wind and Wave by Anne-Marie Rocher. It's an inspiring documentary that celebrates determination and strength of character in the face of disability. Thanks for observing National Accessibility Week with us in the municipality of Meaford. For additional information about accessibility in the municipality of Meaford, including details of the events throughout the week, please visit www.meaford.ca/accessibility. The only thing as an announcement heads up, obviously we are in the middle of an emergency and a number of your senior staff sitting around the table are in constant contact with various people with regard to the emergency. And if anybody needs to get up and take a very important call, that's what they are doing. They're not disregarding the council meeting. They are attending the emergency business.
Okay, thank you. It'd be a good opportunity for me to thank our staff because we have had this emergency has occasioned just an enormous amount of work to supply the community with bottled and bulk water over a period of many days as it's turning out, and from 8 in the morning to late at night. And I thank our staff sincerely on your behalf for sterling effort and all the cooperation they're giving the emergency control group. Other announcements around the table, Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have a couple of announcements. Sunday, June 11th, the Riverside Hall Board is once again presenting one of their breakfasts. This is a great effort by the revamped Hall Board, and my wife and I were lucky enough to be there a few weeks ago for breakfast. It was amazing, and they are inviting everyone to come out June 11th from 9 until about 1 down at Riverside. And it's a little bit early, Your Worship, but I did want to mention that our municipality is celebrating Canada Day, Saturday, July 1st, particularly down at the Meaford Harbor, starting at 8 a.m. And of course, we will have fireworks out on Annan on Friday, June 30th, and the big event in beautiful downtown Boulder, Saturday, July 1st at 6:30. So a lot of things going on, and I'm sure we will hear a lot about those activities in the upcoming 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, or at least Deputy Mayor Keaveney, you're next.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. And I will echo your sentiments on appreciation to our staff and add to that our volunteer fire department and the incredible efforts that they have put in the last few days in fighting that intense fire. I wanted to begin today by thanking the municipality for the privilege of attending the recent FCM conference. It was definitely time well spent. And I thought I would share the two motions that were approved by the contingent present at FCM. Firstly, resolved that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities call on the federal government to provide needed capital and operating long-term funding and resource supports for local governments to address the growing homelessness crisis. And secondly, resolved that Canada needs a modernized fiscal framework for municipalities, and be it further that FCM lead the development of a new municipal growth framework that results in municipal financial capacity being more accurately linked to national population growth, inflation, economic growth, and the role of Canadian municipalities in the 21st century. And I'll also share that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was present and spoke to the audience, and he emphasized housing as the focus of his speech to us and offered a $4 billion additional fund in relation to the Housing Accelerator, which he wants to see used to double the amount of housing constructed over the next few years. So that was exciting. And other than that, there was lots going on at FCM, of course, but I did stop and talk with the folks at the TC Energy booth at the trade show, and they expressed expectations of comments arriving from the province on the ISO recommendations that were delivered in January by the end of June. So we'll look forward to that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Uhrig.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also announce that this Wednesday, the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, they do a series of online events. And again, in concert with what Deputy Mayor was just talking about with housing affordability, they're doing one called Closing the Gap on Housing Affordability. And it will be Wednesday, May 31st from 4:30 to 6 p.m. So again, anybody wants to learn more about the housing crisis on a local perspective and hopefully what can be done about it, they're a pretty valuable forum. And you can learn more about that at the TISGB.com, which is the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay's website.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I just will make one here very quickly. I took a drive by the fire site earlier today and saw a sign indicating that the Johnny B's has a temporary repair site. I don't know anything about that, but I just encourage you that this is really good news for the Bolsing family, and hopefully they will be open for business before too terribly long somewhere. I couldn't stop and read the sign, but okay. Next is public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and will be limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the agenda, or ask a public question, they may do so either in person at the council chambers here or remotely via Zoom. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or to ask a public question must register in advance by 10 a.m. on the morning of the meeting. An email with access information will be sent to those who register for remote participation. Deputations are limited to 5 minutes and public questions are limited to 2 minutes. Also, the public can view this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel, www.meaford.ca/YouTube. So now on to presentations, and I'd like to call to the podium Christiane Sudutu, who is speaking to us on Space for Youth programs. Welcome. Yeah, can we turn on his mic there?
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. It's right on the left. Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Christian Suditu. I run the soccer skills and drills for youth in Meaford. Me and my wife moved here about 8 years ago from Brampton. We were doing youth programs. We were coaching youth programs in Brampton, and we saw a lot of things happening in Brampton over the last 20 years of living there, urban sprawl and diminishing quality of life by means of having to drive 20 minutes to go to a public park or to get essential services. So the reason I'm here today is just to make sure that there are available spaces for youth programs here, and to not take away from some of the public spaces that we have downtown, and have sustainable growth in Meaford instead of just housing. That's what happened in Brampton. But we love this area. We moved here 8 years ago. We love it here. We've been, walking downtown, walking the trails, the people here, the environment here, and we want to see sustainable growth, and we want to see essential services grow here. So I am here. Let's see here.
Do you want another slide there?
Yeah, I do have a slide. So this is me and my friend. So my soccer background. So I've been playing soccer for over 25 years. I've been coaching for over 16 years. I was the director of summer camps at Brampton Soccer Center. I started a women's team in Collingwood just before COVID hit. And I also started the Meaford Soccer Skills and Drills program in 2018 when I saw there wasn't a lot of youth programs here. So, we had the experience, so we wanted to bring it here, and it's been fantastic. This is just my professional, a little bit about me. So I have a business background, and I've been working in business in the area in the last 8 years, and I'm looking forward to using this experience to benefit the local economy. So some of the benefits of organized sports. So obviously, it's good for anti-depression, self-esteem for the kids, teamwork skills, leadership skills, social skills. And then some of the secondary factors, you're getting childcare. I'm looking to hire students to help me coach the kids and create good role models for the kids. Another secondary benefit is tourism. So for example, a lot of currently, you have Owen Sound, Collingwood, and Thornbury all with their own soccer facilities. So me and my wife, we have to travel to Owen Sound. We'll make a day out of it. We'll spend money at the local shops there instead of spending here while we're in Owen Sound and going to play soccer in Owen Sound. So, another secondary benefit of keeping organized sports here in town is helping the local economy. So the Meaford programs that we've been running, there's roughly 100 kids in youth programs currently playing per week. In the soccer programs, we have an average of 54 kids. It is one of the cheapest sports to get involved with as youth. A pair of running shoes and a green field, and you're good to go. So it's very easy. I looked up just some population stats, and this picture here is development in Meaford over the next however many years, but population growth is coming. So I'm just trying to get ahead on some of the youth programs, making sure that they're in place so that we can house all of these people and give them good essential services like youth sports. You know, there's a lot of young families moving here. So that's the point of this slide here. So the soccer program, so it's grown from 30 students to about 54 students every week. The Facebook page has over 100 followers now, was created just about a month ago. All the classes are fully booked. And we started free pickup this winter and it was phenomenal. We saw about 30 to 40 kids every week for free pickup. You know, it's all about providing affordable programs for youth. It's not all about providing just one-on-one coaching. So what I do is in a soccer league, the kids are just thrown on a field. They don't know the sport. They're kind of, you know, one kid will take the ball and run the whole field with it and nobody else is getting involved. So our programs, every kid has a ball at their feet for 60 minutes. They're learning the sport. It's activity based. So it's just been phenomenal. And I'm looking to grow to roughly 3 to 4 nights a week to provide youth sports for the community. So some of the issues that I'm having. So previously, before COVID, there was 3 schools in Meaford that I could book space in. Currently, there's only 1. So we're all kind of fighting over the same spaces now. I know that the school is broken into 2 gyms. So roughly, you know, 4 or 5 nights a week times 2 gyms, you only have like 8 to 10 spots available now for the winter months. And we all know, you know, the winter months here, eight months of the year. So, you know, the indoor spaces are very important. So this is one area that I'm looking to improve and I'd love some feedback or some, you know, help from you guys. Same with the soccer field. So we used to have a lot of soccer fields. You can see in the image there, we're kind of playing on a baseball diamond. It's okay for that age group, you know, 3 to 4 year olds, no problem. Once you get to an older age group, you kind of want some more structure, some nets, some field space. And right now I've been waiting 3 months for permission for the new school field in behind the new school. I'm not sure what's happening with that, but I just can't get permission to use it. And I don't think there's any other fields, currently soccer fields within the municipality that I can use. I'm not sure about the Bognor one, but that's a bit out of town. But yeah, just having a lot of trouble. And the field behind the school is unavailable for 4 weeks, 2 weeks before school ends and 2 weeks after school starts. So it's really cutting down the space that is available for summer soccer when there are only about 3 months available for summer soccer. Some of the solutions that I was able to come up with, keeping the old school soccer field on I believe it's Aiken there. That one, we can't book it. So you can go and use it for free sports, but you can't actually, you know, book it for organized sports right now. Adding some lights would also help to extend the season, you know, into September. You're getting into the 8 p.m. dark sunset times. Or changing maybe one of the baseball diamonds into a soccer field because there's already lights there. I'm not sure about any grants, and obviously building a recreation center is a big ask. I know Owen Sound is currently looking at putting a dome over one of their soccer fields, which is going to be roughly $2.2 million, which will draw a lot of players out that way. And also I think they're going to turf one of their Kilsyth arenas. So yeah. Yeah, so that's my presentation. Youth are the future. Let's keep them here. You know, let's keep youth sports here and let's keep this economy growing and sustainably growing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. You're exactly 10 minutes. Excellent.
Wicked.
Are there questions for Christian? Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so much a question, but just a comment. And Christian, I'm really glad that you came out today. On a personal level, my daughter attends the pickup soccer, and she's not a very sport-oriented kid, nor is she very competitively minded. So organized sports that have a high level of competition really isn't something she's interested in. But since she started going to the pickup soccer, that is her favorite thing in her life right now. Her whole life revolves around pickup soccer. You guys are great role models. You provide a very welcoming, inclusive environment. It's very well organized. You can tell you guys know what you do. Just the enjoyment that all the kids get out of it, where it doesn't have to be a super competitive environment where it's all win and losses. So I just wanted to say, from my perspective, I appreciate all the effort that you and Danny and all the other volunteers do to make this happen. And it does show that there is a glaring need for kids programming like this. And I would be happy to work with you to try to find some sort of resolution as we go forward. But yeah, great work, and please keep it up. And my daughter can't wait till it starts up again. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Christian. You'll have to forgive me. Are you talking about a full-size Olympic soccer field, or are there downsized versions that would be appropriate, that would be suitable?
That's a great question. Thank you. So currently the town is smaller. We could easily divide the field, the old soccer field, into 3 smaller fields. That's what I would suggest, just because of the size of the population. We're not going to get a full 20 versus 20 team here. You know, if you wanted to do something like that, but just a 5v5 field is sufficient. Like a 60 by 100 foot field would be sufficient for what we're looking to do here. It's just the numbers aren't there yet, and it would be, that field is perfect to be divided into 3 smaller fields with smaller nets.
Thanks very much. And that sounds very reasonable. Certainly a good starting point anyway. We don't need a Wembley Stadium or an Aston Villa. We just need a soccer field for kids. A number of years ago, all of my youngsters were involved in the local soccer association, and it was a big deal. There were a lot of young people and a lot of great exercise, and I'm sorry that it kind of slid off the track a bit, but no, it's a beautiful game.
Yes.
And hopefully we can have a resurgence. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Urick, did you have a comment or question?
I didn't even have my hand up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I was
I thought you did.
I was definitely thinking about one, yes. So I will ask one. No, the old GBCS field is obviously surplus. It makes me curious, and Matt, Rob, you can chime in, and I know this is all pipe dream stuff, but when something's been deemed surplus like that, until it actually gets to the point it's sold, I know you said right now you can't actually book it because it's not really a functioning entity, but is there some mechanism that we can, that through the school board, that, because that's obviously people are using that space, there's no official way of doing that at all?
For you, Mr. Mayor, there could be, but it would be up to the school board. And if the school board don't want to do that for whatever reason, then they certainly don't have to. It's the maintenance of the field, I suspect. If it's not bookable, then they don't have to maintain it to a specific standard, and that then of course reduces their costs.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm sorry. So as a follow-up to that, have you contacted the school board to just see and what their answer was in that regard?
Yes, so the only bookable field is behind the new school, and that was in the process of actually being built as we were booking these last couple months. It was the first time they were able to book it. So I assume that's why I've been waiting a couple months to be able to actually use the field. I haven't been able to use it. I'm assuming I've been told that I'll be able to run a 10-week program July and August, but that's pretty much it.
Councillor Bartley.
Got power now. Thank you, Mayor Kent, and thank you, Mr. Ford. And thank you for your presentation and what you've done so far in the town of Meaford. Actually, I was part of the pre-agenda meeting, and senior staff, we talked about it. They're interested. And I know the 7 people around this table is interested, so I'm going to put it out to you. Let's see what we can do and get something done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very kindly, Christian.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next deputations, and we have 4 deputations this afternoon. Each person has 5 minutes to speak. We have 2 in person and 2 virtually. And I'm going to call at this time on Robert Foster. These all have to do with short-term rentals. Mr. Foster?
Your Worship, Deputy Mayor Keaveney, members of council and staff, my name is Robert Foster. My wife Linda and I reside at 261 Cedar Avenue in the glorious municipality of Meaford. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank Margaret for so promptly reacting to me this morning with a request to get on the agenda. I am before you today regarding agenda item 10A, report CAO 2023-09, the short-term rental accommodation charter. You will all have received my recent email both directly and through the council portal for recorded correspondence. It is indicative of the community atmosphere that when I email council, I have to blind copy the members in my own group, as many are afraid to complain publicly for fear of retribution from neighboring Airbnbs. You may recall that I stood before previous council on September the 26th to make a deputation expressing residents' concern on this issue. There are others in the audience today who have also made similar deputations. After that deputation, every member of this council, either as a sitting member or candidate, reached out to me by phone or email, expressed their wholehearted support and recognition of the urgency to enact regulations, for which I thank you. After that deputation, I remember, used by phone or email, fortunately, I have a limited understanding of the workings of municipal governments, and I appreciated that the pump storage project discussion sucked a lot of air out of the room for quite an extended period of time. And budget season happens like the sun coming up. But that was 8 months ago. And when I made that presentation, and now a document is proposed that will study the issue until December of 2023. I suggest to you the following timeline. As rental bookings for seasonal Airbnbs occur in the winter and early spring, at this pace, council deliberations on this charter would only be occurring in spring 2024. After bookings are made, any implemented regulations likely would, following this timeline, would not come into effect until 2025. I hope you will all agree with me that this is totally unacceptable. And although I only have spoken about timelines, this document as presented on so many levels does not begin to recognize residents' angst and your collective consensus to get something done. I paraphrase the wise statement of the mayor when he was councillor on September 26th, that we shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel on this when many municipalities, both large and small, are dealing with the identical issues. I thank you for your time, and my request today is that you consider my comments in your upcoming deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Any questions for him? If not, I'm going to call on the next presenter. It's Chris Scary.
Hello. Oh, it's working good. It's been a while. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Good afternoon, Mayor Kentner, Council, Mr. Armstrong, and staff. Thank you for having me speak today. I am here to share a couple of thoughts on short-term accommodations in Meaford. I understand that the STA project charter being presented later this afternoon is just the start of a thorough process with opportunities for public participation, which I will be part of. We are a small and unique community, much different than our neighbors. Meaford has very limited accommodations outside of STAs. These STAs provide a place to stay not only for a large portion of the tourists that visit our area, they also house visiting families and friends, contractors, and business people. The positive impact that STAs have in Meaford far outweighs any concerns or identified negative impacts that a handful of problem units have created. Yet, in this guiding document presented by staff today, the statement, concerns and negative impacts is used half a dozen times with no mention of the benefits and positive impacts that STAs surely have brought to our town. I believe that we are starting the whole process on the wrong foot. If this charter is the foundation that staff is using to come up with a proposal on how to regulate STAs, then it will be a biased process with the predetermined understanding that most STAs are of concern and create a negative impact. If we truly want to find a positive solution to regulating STAs and dealing with the few problem units while still benefiting from the services and revenue that the majority of STAs bring to our communities, we need to have a two-sided conversation. I'm going to refer to the analysis portion of page 2 of 3 and quote that project charters are one of the tools used in project management to ensure accountability and facilitate transparency by defining a complete and agreed upon description of a project. Okay, I don't believe that this proposal is that. Next, on page 1 of 11 in the, pardon me here for a second, page 1 of 11, it says, provide an outline of current data related to short-term accommodations within the municipality, including numbers and characteristics of unit, history of related bylaw enforcement files, reported complaints and characteristics of complaints reported through official and unofficial channels, identified negative impacts, locations and distribution, current framework and land use management bylaw, and that. And then there's another small little bullet point there that says review and outline of the role short-term rental accommodations play in the tourism hospitality industry in Meaford. There is no word on how and what will be considered here. Okay, there's nothing. There's no bullet points as to this is how we're going to look at, nothing at all as to positive side. What about the number of visitors attracted to Meaford? The types of visitors, potential tourism revenue generated by STAs, employment created for service businesses like cleaners, property managers, and service providers like plumbers and electricians and other trades. Revenue from STAs, and how can Meaford work with STAs to capitalize on visitors' stays in our community? I propose that this project charter be rewritten to reflect that all sides will be considered. I also feel that any statistic and relative information gathered by staff should be available for the public to review in whole. I think that if we're going to do this right, we need to look at both sides, and I am all for regulation of short-term accommodations, 100%. But it cannot be looked at from a negative standpoint, because all the paperwork I read today sends the message to anyone reading it that all STAs have a negative impact on our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to go on to our next speaker. This will be done virtually. So Diane Hilliard, are you connected with us at this point?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, just go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Kentner, members of council and staff. First, I want to say thank you to all the staff and emergency services, people and volunteers for keeping our people and our property safe this past week. It's a job we're all very thankful you do. So kudos and thank you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak today to the short-term rental project charter. I hope today's discussion will be fruitful and concentrated on the function of the charter and not the finite details of what we hope a legislation may or may not look like further down the road. I understand and hope that our audience does too, that the project charter is a roadmap of what and how to conduct the formal study of STRs. And it is with that in mind that I comment today. I would like to start with stating that I am not opposed to short-term rentals. I've used them myself. Short-term rentals are here to stay. And there should be no doubt in anyone's mind that they are indeed in Meaford. And by the hundreds. However, I want them to be recognized for what they are, businesses, full stop. And as businesses, they are currently operating in Meaford, unregulated, unlicensed, unaccounted for, and without accountability. This project charter has the potential to address the matter with full consideration of the entire situation. To Chris's point, the benefit and the people and our future. I see the charter as a tool to level the playing field. The charter is our process to lay the foundation that will protect our community of people and the businesses who currently operate within regulations and for the benefit of all. My concerns about this report are as such, and I will elaborate a little bit on each. On the budget, collection of data, consultation, opportunities missed, and communications and tone. On the budget, the actual work behind this charter is being funded with zero budget dollars. Work is theoretically to be done by current staff, of whom we are being consistently told are overworked. So where does that leave this particular council priority? In a place where they are now choosing one project or work file over another. Council, we need to delegate funds to this project charter. And this ties directly into the next concern, the collection of data. There is a universal theory on data collection and use. It's called the GIGO effect. Garbage in, garbage out. According to the charter's timing, the collection of data occurs in the high season for short-term rentals. Even a seasoned pro, yes, pun intended, knows that if you try to research the number of STRs in existence right now in Meaford, your results will be distorted. Why? Because one has to input dates to see what's available. And yes, we are a popular destination, so it's only what's left that will show at any given time. It's a monumental task to consolidate all the websites and platforms, which are in the dozens. It's not just Airbnb that advertise SDRs. So basing so much of the results on this particular element absolutely requires funding. Part 2 of my data collection concerns that there is a massive risk when taking into consideration the number of bylaw and law enforcement complaints to date. And I would like to explain this. First, when a noise issue occurs, it's invariably after 11 p.m. Dear Mayor and councillors, have you been to our website to find out who to call? You may call and speak to a person during office hours, or you can fill out an online form to lodge a complaint. Well, that's effective. I shake my head and say, why would I bother? Many people who live beside or near disruptive STRs are not going to fill out an online form or hope for a call on Monday morning, long after the sometimes 2 or 3 different renters have left. There is a flaw in this system, understandably, because it relates to the workforce and the impossible task of staffing a 24-hour call center. So you can bet that it's not the, and I quote from the charter, exaggerated and oversimplified descriptions of the challenges and solutions that will skew these results. It will be the lack of resources in a flawed system that creates the void. So let's be realistic about this statistics. Call the police, you say. Well, I'm married to a still active first responder of 35 years, and I can assure you, the last thing they want is to be called to a noise or a nuisance complaint. There are 100 other issues our OPP deal with from Owen Sound to Collingwood hourly that would stand out louder than a house complaint. I know I'm not alone in feeling this way. I don't want to call the police and take them away from something that could be much more important. So I plug my nose and I deal with it myself repeatedly. So here we are, back to skewed results. This is the reason we need to assign budget dollars to this project charter and have either dedicated staff or, even better, hire an agency or organization that works on gathering data quickly and efficiently. It will lighten the load on staff and be an unbiased collector of information. This is an investment in this council priority. Please make a motion to designate budget to this charter. Consultation. I believe the Economic Development Advisory Committee should be a leading part of this ongoing discussion. We have an active and very experienced group on that committee who can serve this process well. It's their wheelhouse. It is my hope that we lean on their suitcases full of knowledge to help guide us. And to the best of my knowledge, we at Meaford the municipality of Meaford do not have a tourism expert on staff. I could be wrong, but I do understand we rely on the Economic Development, Tourism and Culture Department at Grey County. So again, appropriate consultation for this study is key. And the businesses that operate legitimately in Meaford should also be front and center in these discussions and at all intercepts. The motels that abide by rules and regulations and serve the exact same function should have a top-tier place at the table. Council, please make a motion to direct staff to specifically include the Economic Development Advisory Committee, a representative from Grey County Economic Development, Tourism and Culture Committee, and a representative from the local motel owners.
Diane, you are over your time.
Oh, gosh. Okay, can I just ask for a 1-minute extension?
You've had 2 minutes here, over 5 minutes. So
Okay, I'll wrap up. On a final note, I just would ask, the tone of this charter is quite frankly surprising. I understand that pointing out challenges are a part of this process, but to swipe the study with a sense of discredit before it has even commenced is highly unusual. Please put forth a motion to have appropriate collaborative language to encourage a positive outcome. Thank you.
thank you, Diane. And our final presenter is Catherine Haggart. Are you there, Catherine?
I missed
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Mayor Kentner, Council and staff, and thank you for hearing my deputation on the STR charter proposal. I live on a municipal street that has been significantly impacted by short-term rentals. And many of the homes that used to be occupied by families with ties to this community now house a different group of tourists, sometimes rowdy ones, most weekends, especially in the summer. Not knowing your neighbors undermines a resident's sense of community and a sense of place, a sense of well-being. And STRs also take up available housing stock that could be given to people who are staying longer term and intend to give back long term to the community. We've been seeing this destabilization for some time, so I'm pleased to see that the issue will now be addressed by this council. I know there will be time in the future to provide some community input about our direct concerns, so I won't do that here, but I did want also to mention that I was surprised when I saw the final line of the staff report about the budget. What is the thinking behind using only current staff resources to review this very complex and pressing issue? I appreciate that time is of the essence, and that may be part of the reason for the decision to keep it with staff. But if staff resources and expertise are going to be used in addressing all of these issues, then the expertise of staff would have to be established. And I'm not sure, does municipal staff have the requisite expertise in the area of cyber data collection and assessment to get us an accurate count of how many STRs are operating and where? There are expert firms that may be able to provide the municipality with this service. And yes, it will be for a fee, would be something to negotiate. Besides searching the web, what other methods are going to be used to create such an inventory of STRs that carry on business in Meaford? Some of them won't be on the web, but many residents know where the STRs are located on their streets, even if the operator isn't advertising them openly. The veracity of the count or a thorough inventory is going to be a very important first step in getting buy-in in this process. And Meaford must also decide why STRs are being allowed. Is it a boon for tourism? Is it going to undermine future proposals in places like the Skydev development where a hotel operator is being sought? Is it really about helping out a homeowner who has a hefty mortgage and just wishes to rent out their home or a portion of it once in a while for a bit of extra cash? Is it those things, or is this really aiding business owners, and more often corporations, that do not intend to ever live in the property, but want to set up a business in our stable, residentially zoned areas? They earn a profit, but residents lose the peace, enjoyment, and sense of security in our neighborhoods. And some municipalities have banned STRs outright unless the home belongs to and is used as a person's principal residence. and they would have to prove it's their principal residence. This includes larger cities who have spent a lot of time investigating these issues. They will not allow investors to buy up scarce housing stock and use it as an Airbnb. I refer you to the short-term rental business license program in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I did put a reference in that in the email that I sent to council on Friday, so you can click the link. Vancouver and other jurisdictions, many closer to Meaford, have done a lot of work in this area and have some very sophisticated examples for regulation. So I hope those are being considered and considered very quickly. Finally, I hope to hear a bit more today from the authors of the report about the communication strategy they envision to capture and incorporate public input. Residents continue to report problems learning about important meetings from the municipality. I understand staff has faced some criticism, cynicism about the communication process in the past. And a failure here could undermine public support for this project as a whole, and that would be very unfortunate. We really need to get residents to buy in, welcome the residents to this process, create a team approach so that we can address the many challenges of these STRs. And many of them, frankly, are businesses, and they're being run in areas where people live. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And that concludes the deputations. Are there any public questions today? Seeing none, I'm moving on to item 7 on the agenda, and this is something that has been added, I think very wisely by staff. And Rob Armstrong, I'll turn it over to you to maybe orchestrate this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by some opening comments and then I will turn it over to council. Basically, if you wish to have a discussion and ask questions at this point. I'll just state that although according to the Emergency Management Plan and the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act, the mayor is the liaison with council and keeps them up to date. However, at our discussion yesterday, our control group meeting, the decision was made to add this item to provide council with opportunities to ask questions and have a conversation, as well as for the public to hear with regard to further information on what's going on. So that's why this item was added. This conversation is designed to answer questions about what happened. It is not a debrief that will occur after the emergency, after we're done and assess the situation. And it's not a review what didn't happen like it should. It's really for you to ask information of what's going on. Just regarding the current status update, the municipality declared an emergency yesterday afternoon, May 28th, due to ongoing environmental concerns going forward. The do not consume advisory is still in place as recommended by public health. We are awaiting water sampling test results from the Ministry of Environment, which will be evaluated by the applicable agency and advising the municipality accordingly. We're working with MOE and Health Unit on other issues, including site cleanup and soil contamination. And staff will continue to work to understand the implications of those things and will provide updates as they come forward. That's a summary of where we're at now. The water distribution, I'll just add the water distribution center continues. We expect another delivery of water bottles, cases of water at about 3 o'clock today, similar to what we received on Friday. So that's coming and will continue to be provided while we're in this situation. We continue to have the water tanks available for refilling on it's available from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. Similar to with the water bottles when they're on stock. So I will turn it back over to council. I don't know if the mayor wants to ask anything, answer anything further.
No, I'm just going to open the floor to questions and or comments. So go right ahead, council. Councillor Uhrig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll echo the thanks to staff who've done an exemplary job in kind of working with this the best that they possibly could. I was out there yesterday or Saturday as well, the arena and witness firsthand. Amazing job. The only question I guess I have, because I think the municipality has done a very good job at actually disseminating information and keeping people apprised of what's going on. I am a little disappointed in the public, in the public health kind of role in dissemination of information on this. If you actually go to the Grey Bruce Health, Public Health Grey Bruce, it literally says, go to News Meaford for information. And I'm sure many other people around the Horseshoe heard from various businesses over the weekend about what can we do? You rightfully said, call public health. It would, and I know you don't have a lot of leverage, but it would be very helpful somehow if public health was as adept at disseminating information as you guys have been, because a lot of people have been asking a lot of questions that can't be answered, and public health has been somewhat helpful. It's a little disappointing.
Did you wish to respond, Rob?
I think that's more of a comment and again, back to that comment, when we debrief, we'll be looking at those discussions with both public health and Ministry of Environment on how this went down and how things can be approved in the future.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do actually have three questions, but I'll start with one, and then I know my fellow councillors also have questions. This relates, and I think maybe Jessica or Victoria might be able to help me out more with this one. We have these white strips in the ditches now out along the highway. I'm assuming they are to collect residue, or at least to stop it flowing. Now, I'm hoping you know what it's the best I could describe it. They're like a fat white snake, okay? How soon did we get them put in? I know at the time of the fire, there was a lot of other necessities, but I'm assuming they are put in there to try to filter out some of the residue that came from the fire. Can you give me a little bit of information on when they went in, what the purpose was, how effective we think they will be?
I'm not too sure who placed it. The fire department, obviously they manage the scene. And we don't have them here right now. They managed the scene. They called hazmat, who came and did an assessment of the situation with regard to environmental impacts and the cleanup. But I can't personally speak to that. I don't know if anybody else can.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the hazmat / spills action center was on site the night that it happened. Their remedial work and containment work took place pretty much from the moment they got there through the next day. So, but what they've done is their professional opinion in containment, which is above and beyond what we're telling them to do. They're doing it because that's their expertise, and those snakes are there in order to keep contamination where it is for now. The Ministry of the Environment was just in touch with me, and they are on site working with the folks for outlining what needs to happen for cleanup. So we have no real answers at this moment as to what they're telling the owner. That is between them and the ministry. They will issue us a letter to say what exactly was told to be done. But again, that's their area of expertise, and they coordinate with their third party to ensure that whatever the ministry is requesting is done to everyone's satisfaction.
Thanks for that. Sorry to throw a slider at you like that, but they are intended to help contain, if there indeed there are contaminants, to help contain them from getting out into the bay. Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. First of all, I was just going to start by thanking you again for the communication while I was away, and Councillor Bell, greatly appreciated. And the feedback I've been receiving from the business community is that the regular communications provided by the municipality were very helpful in directing them and making decisions about the operations of their businesses and who to call, as Councillor Uhrig mentioned. And my question was basically along the lines of Councillor Greenfield's, and Jessica's answered most of it, but perhaps there's something else you might like to add in terms of the remediation process going forward. Sort of where do the municipality's responsibilities end, and where does the owners and his insurance kind of take over? I know that there's still a little bit of smoldering going on. Will our volunteer fire department be required to, you know, keep going in and monitoring that, and just a basic outline of what happens next?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I can speak to the whole thing, but especially the fire department's requirements, but so right now, the remediation work is beginning to be conducted on site. And again, the communication is happening between the people that need it to happen with, which is the Ministry of the Environment and the owner, and then the owner's third-party company. So those three have all come together, or are currently all coming together, to make sure that what is required to stay on site happens, and then the work can happen. They'll outline it all, so it'll be clear to everyone who needs it to be clear to for the site. The offsite is still to be determined, but I feel like we will know very shortly about what that looks like and where it comes from. I'm expecting a letter from the Ministry of the Environment to outline on-site versus off-site. So, but there's a lot that goes into that, and even the conversations that we've had today, it's kind of a two-step process: on-site and off-site, and whether they cross and who's involved is kind of what's currently happening. So really, we're just waiting on direction for the off-site, whether we're involved or not, and what that might look like.
From the fire point of view, as far as we're concerned, what's happening on site is, as you say, some smouldering, some smoking. I think that's pretty inevitable from the materials that were there and the heat that got up to. We consider it to be something that's completely under control, because otherwise we would be there with a fire watch throughout, and that's not something that the fire chiefs felt he needs at this stage. Obviously, if that changes and if something were to crop up that means we need to attend, then we will be there very quickly and we would perform what we need to. That happened on Saturday morning, I think, as well as throughout the day on Friday. So, you know, we're there, but we're not at the stage where we need to be keeping an eye on it on a 24/7 basis.
Other questions? Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is that fire department manages the scene, but my question is, who manages the scene around the scene with regards to bystanders, minimum safe distances? I was shocked with this is just an observation, but a shock to the number of families with children that were really close to the most toxic substances burning that you can imagine. That can't be safe. And was that communicated to the bystanders? Maybe you could just fill the public in on that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Forder, through you, Mayor Kentner. I think that's one where the fire team do their best to establish a boundary, and they're establishing the boundaries to make sure that it is safe in terms of the heat and the flames and anything that might be going bang in the night, as we know did on Thursday. The OPP were on scene as well, and really it is down to them to make sure that people are sort of being kept to a safe distance. Our firefighters, with the limited number of staff that we have, and obviously we brought in teams from other municipalities, they were very much concentrating on the blaze itself, and so, you know, it's very difficult for them to be able to sort of bring people back. But as long as people stayed outside the boundary that the fire department established, we really don't have a lot of rights to tell them to do anything else, but the police would have been on scene to try and sort of keep an eye on that.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't sound so good. A bit of a nasal situation going on. I think one of the things that I want to say is that during COVID, we had the emergency control group meet usually at the beginning, every couple of days, and as time went on, assigned times at least weekly. The emergency control group is made up of the mayor, the deputy mayor, and as a member of council appointed myself. And you can imagine key senior staff. During the regular course of the year, those of us who are involved on an emergency control group go to training sessions. Those training sessions are led by our very own Brittany, who does a very nice job under controlled circumstances, telling the control group what we can expect. When I was called to relieve you, Mr. Mayor, the training was critical for our understanding of our behavior. And yet when it was real world, there are many things that transpired, which we will look at. When I was contacted by the mayor, I asked where we're meeting. Generally, we would like to meet at the fire hall itself. But everybody can understand that with the fire department doing the fire department work, that probably saying mayhem might be an understatement. So we all met here. So as things transpire, each person on the emergency control group has a portfolio. And one of my jobs was to reach out to fellow councillors. I know that the CAO reached out to fellow councillors. And under a really good situation, I was also supposed to reach out to the groups like the Kinsmen, maybe the curling club. I've got a list, right? So I want to say that as we were working through this and as information came in, a common thread that I heard was, can we tell people something more at this time? And if you don't have the information, or if information is not totally complete, or it's still in process, sometimes it becomes very difficult to do a statement when the statement is basically open-ended. And I think that what we did, at least with my time here, when we had information that was accurate and when we had things that were definitive, I think that the control group did a good job at a right time, stating the right words to put out the message as best that we could. And just as a small example, and I'm going to wind down, you know, getting bottled water. When I first walked into the room, we had made contact to get water coming. So you write that down, water is coming. As the hours passed, all of a sudden information came in, the water has arrived. We wrote that down, the water is there. Now we have something that we can tell folks. So going through a situation like this, a major fire, it was totally different than going through COVID, where it was very long, very drawn out. And I think when Brittany does her times of training, emergency situations last for a period of time, and this one will have a period of time. And I think that pulling together the group the way it was, I know, Mr. Mayor, you didn't get any sleep that night at all.
Got a bit.
And I mean, that happens. We don't get that schooled to us in our training. You might not be able to sleep, and you might have to sleep on the floor with a blanket, I understand, that we have out in the cabinet. So it was really something in real world. And I'm glad that I keep saying Brittany, but she works with the fire department and she does lead the emergency situation for us. She did a great job, and our training definitely helped. And for somebody that uses pencil a lot, I actually did my notes in pen, as you are required to do, and I did sign off when I egressed the room. So the training, Brittany, is good. If we didn't have that, we'd have been pickled so many ways over that it would have been ridiculous. So I'm just telling you, good job. Okay. And a good job to all the team that was there. And I'm glad, Mr. Mayor, you hung in during the evening, and I was happy to relieve you when I did.
Councillor Bartley, did you have anything to say? Okay. Are we back to Councillor Greenfield?
Thanks again, your worship. And I should have thanked the emergency management team for jumping in on this. As far as I'm concerned, you did a great job. You answered the call, and unfortunately, there are still some questions that can't be answered, but they're being worked on, and everyone has the very best interests of every one of our residents in mind. I was wondering about the water treatment plant, and I recently council got the DWQMS report from last year, and overall it was a very positive report. And I was asking if there had been any unusual numbers, readings since last Thursday evening. Apparently there haven't been, which I think is good news, but I was also told that such things as hydrocarbons and benzenes cannot be detected at the water treatment plant. So is that up to the Public Health Board? Is that up to the Ministry of the Environment to do some inspections on these type of things that, you know, are above the the normal requirements?
Yeah, I can speak to that to the mayor. So the normal testing that we do is for microbiome, biological stuff that can affect our water. This testing for what potentially could have entered the system is not done on a regular basis. And there's only special labs within the province that can do this type of testing. And that was part of us trying to find out where and who and how this could all be done. And we were able to secure that and got it down to the labs on Saturday morning in Toronto for this testing. So this is very specialized testing. It wouldn't be picked up through our normal testing procedures. And I think that's probably the simplest answer to what's happened. It wouldn't be picked up.
That's a great explanation. I think it's important that the Ministry of the Environment outlines what we're testing for. So they're the ones who give us the list of XYZ items above and beyond. So that list was provided to us by the Ministry of the Environment, and those are the tests that we're required to do. And the results then either are shared with and worked through with health, and then they ultimately make the decision to remove the ban or not. But the tests and what we're testing for is requested for LME.
Thanks very much for that. That's reassuring. I guess the only other question I have, your worship, is any idea when we can buy a cup of coffee in town?
We're waiting, and hopefully, that being said, I think it's important to note that some businesses have been able to adapt through public health recommendations and have been able to provide services meeting their requirements. I won't indicate any particular businesses, but I've seen some that have been able to adapt with non-use of water for that purpose. So hopefully soon, though. We're waiting as anxious as everybody else. So.
And I would just sum up by saying my big takeaway is that the main thing you have to learn how to do is hurry up and wait, because that's all you can do in many cases. Without the information you need, you just have to be vigilant and stay on top of the situation. And as soon as we had something, we communicated it, as Councillor Bell has pointed out. And I think we had a tough decision to make on Thursday and Friday, whether or not to declare an emergency. And really, we felt that the fire was under control. We knew that we could not drink the water, but I think we also by Sunday realized really there is a tremendous environmental impact of this fire, and we need to be sure that we are protecting our citizens in every way we can, and that was why we declared the emergency on Sunday. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to move on the agenda. Well, seeing nothing more, council inquiries. This is a little different kind of inquiry. This has to do with our other agenda items. Are there any inquiries at this time? Deputy Mayor Keaveney?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I wanted to inquire of staff. Obviously, we have the STR charter today, and I'm just curious if there is a potential timeline for the remaining charters, or when we might be moving forward with a meeting regarding the setting of our strategic priorities.
There is a note sat on my desk that I haven't sat at in the last 4 days with a schedule on it. And unfortunately, I can't remember what that schedule is off the top of my head. But we just need to run that past Rob, and then we'll be able to give it to council. The idea would certainly be that before summer break, council's adopting priorities. So you will have seen the charters, we'll have talked about them, we'll have edited them, and then we'll be able to come back with an adoption.
Any other questions? Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Not a question regarding to an item on the agenda, but I had a resident ask me, and I said I would inquire. Curious about street sweeping to know if that is finished up for the year, and if not, when can we expect it to be finished, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do street sweeping is scheduled through the spring, usually 2 to 3 passes through town. My understanding is that it is complete. So if there are any locations that people have specific questions about, it's best to phone the transportation department and let them know, or maybe inquire. If I'm wrong, then they'll let you know. But I'm understanding that it is done, but that's not to say that there aren't requirements throughout the year, and we don't know what we don't know. So it's best if they share the information with us.
Thank you.
No more questions. Looking at our motions and bylaws for decision, and first the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, and I'm wondering if there are yes, can we put them together, or Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. I would just like to make a comment on the year-end surplus.
Okay, we can do that, but my question is, can we take these all in one vote? We need, you need to say, okay, I understand. Okay, then we need a motion for that probably. Moved by Councillor Bartley, seconded to separate these items.
No,
we don't.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no,
Okay.
we don't need a motion. If somebody's requested to deal with one separately, we will just deal with it separately.
Okay,
So we'll just take each of these items as individual
In order.
ones and
Okay.
move forward with item A first.
so the first is Finance 2023-15 award of tender for Station 5 pump. And the recommendation is that council, 1, authorize the treasurer to transfer $20,591.14 from the wastewater reserve fund to fund the remaining cost of the Station 5 pump replacement. 2, approve the award of tender ES 2023-06 Station 5 pump replacement to BGL Contractors Corporation at the cost of $100,091.14, including the municipality's non-refundable allocation of HST. And 3, authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into the necessary agreement. We simply need to vote on this, correct?
Did we have a move and a seconder? No, we need a move and a seconder first.
Now
please.
we do. Okay, it's moved by Councillor Bartley, seconded by Councillor Forder. All in favor? And that is on the table. It's passed.
That's
Thank you, thank you. Maybe at the end of the first year, I'll be up to speed on all this. Number 2 is the year-end surplus. The recommendation is that council direct the treasurer, number 1, to make the following non-budgeted year-end transfers: $180,000 to the Bridge and Culvert Reserve Fund, $16,100 to the Library Reserve Fund, and $50,000 to the Capital Intertownship Fire Department Reserve Fund. And 2, direct the treasurer to make the following transfers to be funded from the 2022 operating surplus. A, $187,000 to the Capital Fleet Reserve to fund an emergency repair to a grader in 2023. Transfer $230,000 to the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve for the unfunded PILT payment related to education rates. And that stands for payment in lieu of taxes. C, transfer $98,000 to the Working Capital Reserve to offset the 2023 capital projects funded from reserves. And D, transfer the balance of the 2022 operating surplus to the Information Technology Reserve Fund to implement future software needs. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Urick, seconded by Councillor Greenfield. All in favor? Harry wants some to Steve. Go for yes, you do. You have a question on this.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. Going through what staff wants to do with this money, I have to agree, like I couldn't think of better spot to put most of the money, all the money. My issue is I strongly feel by the end of today, we may need some money for 9A STRs. I think by the end of the day, we may need that. So would we try to set that money aside now or just accept this report and we could get into reserves at that time? Can I have some direction?
I would suggest accepting this report because then you can talk about the money that you want for the project when we're talking about the project, rather than trying to determine an amount now when you're not talking about what it will be for.
I certainly appreciate that. I didn't want it to come into the 9A and you said, well, you should have brought it up earlier. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we ready to vote on the motion? Let's go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a question as well, and I suspect the answer will be similar, but back to the fire and recognizing that some of our fire equipment was damaged, some has to be cleaned, some has to be replaced, and we'll have no idea at this point what kind of funds might be required to catch up with all of that. So I'm just wondering if there is a specific reserve for that purpose, or should we potentially look at possibly dipping into this surplus once we know what that amount is.
I'll talk about this briefly from the fire point of view, but then the CEO or treasurer might want to add to it. I think it's best right now to treat the costs from this week's events as part of our 2023 operating budget and deal with any variance of that at the end of the year, whether that be through a pull from reserves then or be part of the 2023 surplus. The reason I say that is that we don't know what those costs are right now, and we won't for a period of time. So trying to transfer money from this to somewhere, we don't know how much to do that. There's also a couple of different mechanisms where we may be able to recoup some of the costs through the Fire Mark program in particular, but also depending on how high the costs go, the emergency management funds offered by the province. The cost would have to go fairly high for that to come into play, but it's still possible. The other thing is, and I think I would say this about the surplus report in general, is that we're recommending we transfer all of these amounts to these places because we need them for the projects that they're for. So if we were to take some of this money now for unknown costs related to the fire and the environmental issues that we're experiencing, we'd only have to find money to do the things that this budget is doing anyway very soon. So I think we'd just be robbing Peter to pay Paul and just kicking a problem down the road, and that wouldn't really help us very much.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Item 9.2 is items for consideration, and we have two really quite exciting developments just for the benefit of those watching today. And the first is a memorandum of understanding with Ontario Musicians Cooperative Inc. The recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford authorize the execution of a memorandum of understanding with Ontario Musicians Cooperative Inc., OMCI, to establish the Community Engaged Performances Program in the municipality. Need a motion to put that on the floor. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Urick. Discussion. Councillor Urick, I expect you to be a champion of this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's an exciting, it's great. I think it's a really great opportunity to kind of help youth flourish. So I think it's great. Just a couple of questions on it. One is under the under the MOU, it talked about outdoor locations could include Meaford Hall, Meaford Public Library, et cetera, et cetera. Everything mentioned was or is municipal spaces. I'm presuming this can translate to beyond just municipal spaces. It didn't mention Woodford, it didn't mention all the various places around the municipality that it could also take advantage. I was actually called on this and somebody said, no, wait a minute, is this just going to be a municipal adjacent initiative? And I'm pretty sure it wasn't, but I want to hear that.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Rob is looking behind me because I'm very happy to say that Krista Story, our Manager of Cultural Services, is with us today. I think most of you know her, but some of our watching public might not. Krista's with us because this would very much fall within her sort of tourism and marketing and culture portfolio, but also because she's had experience of this program in other locations. And so is an excellent person to answer questions that I would not be able to.
Well, thank you, Matt, and through the mayor to council. That is a very good question. And I think that's really at this point depends on who applies for those positions and then working with the community to find the most appropriate locations for those performances or those individuals who may be working in collaboration with other arts, culture related events or initiatives. So that is yet to be determined.
Go ahead, a second question.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of assumed that might be the answer, but I just want to know that the possibility is there and it's going to be investigated.
Absolutely.
Secondary, looking here for the A-frame signage for the total of approximately $2,000, funding will come from the economic development budget. So the question on that was, is that coming out of the so we did the community bursaries and that was great. The economic development pot that's going to come next, is this going to come out of that or is this out of an economic development budget for the municipality as a whole? Because we just don't want to lessen the pot for other community groups to support something that's municipally driven.
It's probably best to speak to that one on the economic development initiative side. So we have the bursary that was moved over, a portion that was economic development, and that's available to those. This is actually, we have some additional funding available to there to Newstom that comes up and something that we want to support. And I think this fits along that line of things that would be supported from strategic and the economic strategic initiatives component.
Right. Just visibly, it just appeared that we were lessening the pool for something. So that's great. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a further question, mine's in relation to the insurance. I see that a 2 million liability is required. And do we not generally require a 5 million for most things, or is 2 the norm?
It very much depends on the situation. For large projects or for things where you're having an impact potentially on our infrastructure, then we would ask for a 5 million cross liability coverage. But for something like this, where things are relatively low and the risk is relatively low, then 2 million is absolutely fine.
Other questions? Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Not a question. I just want to make a comment. When I read this, I thought, this is really a great initiative. I think it's going to be great for the downtown. I'm hoping maybe some of these young people might have an opportunity to get out a little further in the municipality. And no, I'm certain that this is going to just add another really good touch to our municipality, amplifying the great energy and ability of young people who are inclined to take up musical careers. And I'm just thinking in 20 years' time, when the next Gord Lightfoot or Shania Twain appear from these entertainers, we can boast that, hey, I got this started in Meaford. Thank you.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just sort of piggyback on Councillor Greenfield, his comments. One thing I do really like about this program is that it doesn't just focus on the musicians themselves. There's great emphasis on the technical expertise as well. So for those that love music and maybe want to produce or be involved in some of the more technical components of music production and performance. I think that is great. And it also helps retain these people in the smaller communities where they do not have to go to the big city in order to get that education and experience. And Meaford is the, I guess, pilot project for Grey County for this, which I think is also tremendous. So this is very, very cool. I'm excited about it.
Okay, wonderful.
And I'll just add my thanks, Krista. This is really cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. And then we have another good news story as well. And this is the Splash Pad fundraising and Trillium Capital Grant. I'll just read the recommendation that council apply for a Trillium Capital Grant for the Splash Pad replacement and expansion project at McCarroll Park. Second, forward a fundraising agreement with the Sydenham Optimist Club. And third, include the splash pad replacement and expansion project in our 2024 capital budget with the balance of funds required after fundraising and grants to be funded from the tax-supported budget. Can I have a mover and seconder for this? Councillor Bell and Councillor Forder, all in favor? Well, I think we should discuss it first, sorry. Yes, yeah, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think this is terrific with the Sydenham Optimist Club. As council recalls, they did file for support from the community grant program. We were able to help them with that. The Sydenham Optimists are well known for looking after the fireworks out at the Annan Ballpark. And to see that the Sydenham Optimists are truly a municipality of Meaford Service Club. And I really praise them for wanting to get on board with this. And I wish them well and look forward to a successful endeavor doing this at the Splash Pad.
Ditto, for sure. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and absolutely support Councillor Bell's comments and totally agree. This is just a fantastic story. And I'm just going to throw this out there for consideration. One of the booths I visited at the FCM trade show was a vendor who constructs splash pads. And what they also do at the same time, if a municipality wishes, is add the infrastructure for an outdoor skating rink. And I know we've heard a lot from our residents about the desire to have an outdoor skating rink. And he seemed to indicate that this was something that could be accomplished for a relatively reasonable amount of additional money. So I thought if we happen to do really well in fundraising or with our grant applications, maybe this is something we could consider.
Great idea. Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple questions with regards to this proposal here. So in the proposed drawings, just curious to know what would be the new square footage of the splash pad in comparison to the current one? I'll start with that, and I have two more questions after. Thank you.
I'm afraid I cannot answer that in terms of the specific square footage because I don't have those numbers in front of us. But looking at the drawing and from conversations, it's around about double of what it currently is, I think. Though obviously it's a slightly different shape.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor.
Questions there?
If I may, yes. So in a situation where the grant is not approved, what happens if a significantly lesser amount is approved for the grant? How will that affect how this project would carry forward?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a really good question. I'm glad somebody asked it. Generally, the Trillium grant is a yes or a no. So we will apply for the 150,000. That's the maximum because the project is of significantly more than that. So we will be covering the municipal share very easily. So if we were to get it, we should get the 150,000. If we are rejected, we just won't get anything. If we do not receive the grant, then council will be able to decide in the 2024 budget whether or not they wishes to invest the money from the tax supported budget to cover the costs of it beyond the fundraising. There is a commitment in this resolution because we need to have some degree of commitment in order for Trillium to even consider us for a grant, because if we were to say they'll give us 150,000, but then we turn around and say no, actually we don't want it because we're not going to do the rest of the project, that's a risk for them that they don't want to take. So the commitment's here to put it into the budget. If we get the grant, we'll have to move forward because the timeline to do the construction from these grants is pretty tight once they're awarded. If we don't get a grant, then council will be able to make decisions when we get to budget for next year at the time. And, you know, that will also be part of the conversation about the fundraising agreement with the Optimist Club and indeed any other service clubs that decide they'd like to get involved, which we're very hopeful there will be more than just the Optimist Club to do this. So hopefully we can raise more money.
Okay, yes, another question.
Sorry,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, one more. Thank you very much. And Matt, thank you for your answer. My last question is with regards to engineering costs, is it possible to hold off on engineering costs until we know whether we are approved for the grant? How does that work?
So unlikely, I think, is the simple answer, because again, those tight timelines, we would not likely receive word of whether we've got this grant until September. And then generally, I think they told us that construction would need to be done by May. So if we were to only get a grant in September to then do the engineering work and then do the tender to get a construction company and get all the work done by that deadline would be pretty tight. I don't think that investing in the engineering now is a big deal, particularly if we think that there are fundraising dollars available to do that, because the splash pad is something that, assuming council doesn't want to not have a splash pad, we are going to have to do something to replace in the relatively near future. We do have concerns about its durability. There was a problem last year with getting replacement parts, which meant we had to shut the splash pad early. So if we get some engineering done and the grant doesn't come in and council decides not to move forward in 2024, those engineering works would be valuable for another period of time after that, you know, because not much would change at McCarroll. So, you know, we should be able to come back to them 3-4 years later if we needed to, but I very much hope we wouldn't have to.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. I'd just like to say this is just another example where we have great partnerships between the municipality and our service clubs. And you often hear us talking about the Rotary Club and how you know, well we work together, but we're just so excited to be working with the Sydenham Optimists. So I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We're going to move into Committee of the Whole next. I need a motion for that. Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Forder, seconded. All in favor? And we're doing this at 2:31 p.m.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I could request a short recess at this point. I think this conversation might be a little lengthy. And so I think a few of us need to make a phone call or stretch our legs, and I'm sure council might feel the same.
I just want to make clear that a good number of people have stayed with us for the entire meeting so far to be able to. So 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes adjournment. Well, yeah, I So we've had our 5 minutes and it was enough time for me to forget whether we voted to go into committee of the whole or not, but we better start there, I think. Have a motion to go into committee of the whole. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Bartley. All in favor? And we are in committee of the whole. And the first item of on the agenda is short-term rental accommodation project charter. And the recommendation is that committee of the whole recommend council of the municipality of Meaford adopt the short-term rental accommodation project charter. So we have to put that on the floor with a motion. Somebody moves that, Councillor Greenfield, seconded by Councillor Forder. All in favor? So well, yeah, no, we're not going to pass it that fast. So it is on the floor. It is on the floor. And so who would like to start the discussion? It's an important issue. So sorry, did you want to speak first?
Yeah, if Rob and I could speak first a bit on this project or what you have before us. And first I'll start and mostly on the project charter template, because I think this is the first time that council has seen the template. Sort of outlined in the report what every category is about to explain it. The intent of the project charter is to make sure that there is clarity going into the project so that someone's not expecting someone to come out of a project that was not really intended from the get-go, and it's more about the clarity. So I just want to highlight that first. Just as a general comment to what I just heard with regard to comments, I would say that this project charter, as drafted, aligns generally with what I've heard from the public with regard to those things that would be considered. The research. There are some things about resourcing and timing and things like that, but maybe it could be expanded a bit on the economic. We fully intended to recognize the economic impacts as raised by the one delegate. And fully intended to do that. I think it does align, in my opinion, and Rob can expand on that with regard to what we've just heard from the public, except for timing and resourcing, and we can appreciate that. Just as a general comment. And the last thing, from a staffing point of view, we believe that with the timing, it can be resourced to do that. A lot of the research is out there. Example, we have a partner at Grey County who has provided us with the metrics based on a license they have of what are the impacts, what is a lot of the analysis in our community. So we don't have to go out and do that research. It's been done for us, and will be shared as part of that process with the public and discussed with. So it's not all on us to go and do all of that baseline research. There are those resources out there to do that. So I don't know, Rob, if you wanted to expand.
Through your worship, I'd just like to provide sort of a brief overview of some key points to begin this discussion on the STAs before we get into refining it with council's direction, which is the purpose of today. So the project charter being presented today was based on the direction and suggestions that council members provided during their 2-day strategic planning session held earlier this year. During that session, council identified that the primary purpose of this project was to address the negative impacts short-term accommodations were apparently having on neighboring properties, as had been described to each of you during the election period. Council also discussed that it would be important to, first of all, quantify the issues, their frequency and locations through this project, as well as take into account the benefits of these types of accommodations in terms of the tourism industry within Meaford.
During the strategic planning session, it was decided best to start with identifying the scope of the challenges and all the options available to council. Secondly, to gain an understanding of the costs to the taxpayers of Meaford for the implementation of any of those options. And finally, with that information at hand, to decide which course of action to take. The project charter describes the various actions involved in executing these first and second stages, including community and stakeholder engagement. It also describes other important items such as project benefits, risks, deliverables, and timelines. So the primary purpose of the project charter is to ensure, as Rob said, that the work that's being directed is understood by all parties, including the community and stakeholders. And we've heard some interesting comments today about how to refine that. For this project, there's 3 items identified as being out of scope. The first is the aforementioned choice on implementation, as council will make that decision once they have all the information. And the other 2 are long-term rentals and the municipal accommodation tax. The accommodation tax has not been included as it is not a measure for addressing the negative impacts, as was the initial intent of this project, but as a revenue stream for the municipality to support the tourism and accommodation industry. It's not intended to be a punitive measure to control short-term accommodations. As no funds were allocated for this project in council's 2023 budget, the charter describes all the work to be completed through existing staff resources. That essentially covers the quick overview. I'll turn it back to council so that we can get into the interesting work of refining this to address everyone's concerns so that we have clarity on this important project moving forward.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. And I'm going to start out by saying I was very disappointed and very upset with some of the email traffic this week, condemning the mayor and the council for not doing this job properly, and we just started now. It upsets me, some of the stuff. We come out of elections, we went into budget. I don't know what other councillors, I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on the budget. And now we're getting at this, and we're going to get at this and get at this properly. I'm going to listen to the other councillors. I have some ideas. It started out, I agree with Mr. Foster. This needs to be done. This needs to be done right now. But I want this done properly. Mr. Siri has valid points that the STRs do have a place in the municipality, but they have to be regulated. And I just wanted the public to know, I think we're 7 for 7 here on council, that we want this done quicker, but we want it done right. And so that's what we're going to get down and do today. And I'm looking forward to talking for as long as it takes. Thank you.
Councillor Euring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Steve, for that. It's a good comment. And Rob, thanks for that explanation on the charter, because I was curious. I hadn't seen that before, and I didn't know this was a boilerplate that had been used in the past with other large projects, because it's an interesting take on how to do it. So yeah, it comes down to the mechanics of mechanisms within the actual beast. So a couple of good points brought up. I thought the one thing is, when I initially read this, I was disappointed because I just thought we would be further ahead. And one of the things I thought we would have been further ahead on it, to your point, Rob, is that there are metrics out there that already exist. Moreover, I thought the low-hanging fruit on this was all the various municipalities around. We saw at Roma great examples of other municipalities. So when it came into Q3 for the gathering analysis examples from other municipalities, that kind of came after the communications and public engagement part of the aspect. And I would have thought that, yes, we need to know what we have to deal with wholeheartedly, but we also need to know what is out there and exists that we can use. And I would have thought that that would have been want to be in place before we were engaging with the public, so that you can say, here's what exists out there. So you're not going into the public and saying, what do you want to do? No, here are examples that you can work from, which sets a kind of a guideline and makes life a little bit easier than just starting to reinvent the wheel. So that was one of the things I had, was just the timeline concerned me, that we weren't already looking into these other municipality examples and best how to utilize them into our own example. So that's where I would start.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I see that Director Boyd had his hand up. I don't know if you want to address him first or.
If you wanted to answer Councillor Yuri, guess, okay, sorry, I didn't see that.
No worries. Through your worship. So it's already been brought up about budget. That timing again reflects what little resources we have. So yes, that can change, but we also can only do so much. So potentially, as I'm expecting perhaps another councillor around the table is going to mention, reallocating some budget funds to this, that can shift the timelines. The only other thing is in terms of the reaching out to the public, again, the premise that was brought forth by all the councillors was to deal with the negative impacts, right? So in some ways, it almost doesn't matter how many there are of these. It depends on how much of an impact they're having. I can say the data we have now in terms of complaints, and there's been some comments made about, is that the right way or whatever? I can only count what's real. The complaints we've had through bylaw since 2020 is 12. I can only say that is the scale of what we've had to address so far. If individuals choose not to make complaints, that's fine. And maybe there are some concerns. I don't feel that they're warranted about pushback and all that. It's not going to come from us. But until we have that, it's difficult for us to suggest actions, again, because we're talking about addressing negative impacts. If council wishes to change that, fully your prerogative, and that does change the scope, and that's why we're having this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Well, thanks, Robin. That makes sense. Although I will say, harkening back to conversation, I thought it was, negative tone was definitely a great part of the conversation because it was born of that. But I seem to remember that it was about having legislation in place, using examples of other municipalities who, because it is potentially a small revenue generator to help offset bylaw, municipal costs, et cetera. So this was not just about the negative impact as much as it was, we're one of the last municipalities to literally not have that. And it is something that should be in place to kind of stop the factory ones. We're not saying that there shouldn't be Airbnbs in any way, shape, or form. So I would hope we would stress less on that negative concern and in terms of having a structure in place that's positive moving forward. So I agree with you, but.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I just wanted to begin by reiterating that this is the number one priority of this council. We heard this comment more often than anything else during the campaign period. And we all, as Steve said, 7 of 7, we all agreed this is our number one priority. So it is time to get moving forward with this. I want to thank Bob and Chris and Diane and Catherine for their comments today, all really valuable and will be very helpful to us as we move forward in this discussion. Again, going back to my weekend at FCM, I had a considerable amount of time with people at the Airbnb booth. And I was pleased to see how supportive they are of bylaws. They want to see enforceable bylaws in place in municipalities. And to that end, they offer services free of charge to support us, to work with us as we prepare a bylaw that would be appropriate for Meaford. They sent to me today, which I shared with our CAO, a list of tools that they are prepared for municipalities that include things like law enforcement partnerships, a resource that police can go to that provides information on how to deal with certain issues that arise, community standards, risk detection tools, party house bans, and so on. There's quite a list of them. And I'm thinking that this information, along with their assistance and their experience, may help us with expediting our timelines because so much of the work has been done. They highly recommend the bylaw from Lambton Shores, which I've only had time to have a brief overview of reading through, and I hope that everyone will have some time to look at it because it seems to be really well laid out, very thorough, the application process right down to all the explanations that go with all of the the points in place for anyone who's looking to open an Airbnb or who has concerns with one. So I'm quite convinced that with all of this information and with the support of our residents, that we can move forward more expeditiously to complete this bylaw, recognizing that most of the websites I've looked at, it seems to have taken municipalities about a year. But, back to the mayor's comments of no need to reinvent the wheel. So many other municipalities have done this that I'm really, really hopeful that we can tweak that and get this completed in a more reasonable timeline. Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. And first of all, thanks to staff members for bringing this report forward. As I didn't get very far into it until I started to be of the opinion, hey, there's a lot of details here. They're reaching out to many different contributors or potential contributors. I think it's terrific. I agree with that 100%. This, if at all possible, needs to be a decision made upon the information coming forward from all different areas. I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't have something. Well, we're talking Q4 now. That's I take that 1st of October to the middle of December. I don't think after mid-December we're going to accomplish too much. But so optimistically, if we can have something back to council by even mid-October, that would be reasonable. There are two things that I am disappointed in. One that's out of scope, at least at this time. I'm hoping this is not going to be out of scope, out of the question completely. But one is the municipal accommodation tax. The Airbnbs, whether you rent out your home for 2 or 3 weeks over a year, you're going to make some money on it. If you rent out your, and I won't use the word home, because if you rent it out as a short-term rental accommodation, that to me is a commercial business. And so to say that municipal accommodation tax is not even on the list. If I remember correctly, the municipality has very few revenue generators. We got taxes. Don't need to talk anymore about taxes. On occasion, we get a grant from some of the upper levels of government. We may be losing at least some of our development charges. So I think our municipality should be looking at all avenues of potential revenue in the future. And I don't think just a simple fee for fire inspections, building inspections, so on and so forth. Yes, that's essential to get the Airbnbs off the ground. I don't think that's adequate. These are commercial businesses in many cases. What I did want to ask is about the data gathering agencies that has been suggested. First question is this what other municipalities have done? And my second question is, in the past, we've had some pretty good luck with students, summer students from college, university. Is that an option? So, okay, I've said enough for now. Thank you.
You wanted to respond, Rob?
Yeah, I'll maybe respond a bit. So with regard to the municipal accommodation tax, what we've learned is that you have to undertake a lot of consultation. It's required before you can ask the province for that. So we're concerned about it delaying the implementation of where council wants to go with regard to potential licensing. 50% of the funds that you could get from a municipal accommodation tax have to go to a tourism operator. So they go right back into tourism. You have to direct those funds directly. We're not saying that we're not going to do it. It's just the focus of this charter is to look at what we want to do licensing and look at relation to that. If council, and this is going to go to process and where we're at today, if council wants it to be part of the study, I would suggest that someone make a motion. And that's really what we're doing, is talking about motions to make changes to the charter. And that's what we're here to do today. If you want to move that into in scope, you can do that by doing it, but with just understanding that it may potentially delay us implementing it because of that whole separate process of doing the municipal accommodation tax. We have to request it from the province. We have to undertake significant consultation, from what I've learned from other municipalities who are currently going through that process.
Councillor Yuri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So the obvious question is that a potential two-phase project? We set up the licensing now, we get everything in place now, we can do that after and move forward with that. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. So right off the bat, I'm not the one to put this together. I don't know enough about it. I know we've got people even in our audience and whatnot that could put it together better than I am, but right off the bat, I wanted to abolish absent landlords in the municipality. They're taking up our housing stock, they're raising the price of housing, and that's, I think, where the party houses are coming from. So right off the bat, that would be one on the top priority of mine, is absent landlords, and you can tell me I'm wrong if you want to. But I would like to put it back to staff. How much money do you need? Who do you want to hire to get this faster than what's on the charter? I like the charter. We need a charter. Understand the charter. I want to speed the process up. How do we do that?
Mr. Voigt.
Through your worship, I've got 4 items listed so far on potential changes to the charter, just on the comments the council has made. Until any and all those are identified and the charter is complete, there's no way we can even possibly guess on what's going to be involved. We need to complete what the scope of work is, and then maybe we can quickly guesstimate on some stuff. But if the municipal accommodation tax is in or out, that costs money. So we need to know the issues first, and then we can start to look at each item being a $5,000, a $10,000, a $20,000 piece or whatever it is. So we can come up with an answer maybe as we track through this whole discussion and get some of those things resolved.
Can I inquire what is the cost of applying to levy a municipal accommodation tax? Well, we should know the answer to that.
Yeah, we would need to explore that. I think it's not so much the application, it's to prepare the background, to do all the consultation necessary to figure out where we're going to want to direct the funds. So it's more about studying the issue than it's not just simple application.
I don't have a problem with a portion or even a significant portion going back into the tourism industry, because it's very important to our municipality. Who's next? Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, when I read this about the short-term rental, to be very straightforward, I was disappointed. I was disappointed in the fact that it didn't have staff coming back to us saying, we here in the municipality of Meaford recommend, and staff could have given us 20 or 30, 15, didn't matter, some points that we could say that when we put together our bylaw and our rules and our regulations, where those came from, that council could say we like a lot of these things and we don't, because I have to agree with what I've been hearing. It's the timeline of this. So when we were doing our strategic priorities, and I know that senior staff took notes and they've made comment on that. The reason why, I know Mr. Voigt, you said since 2020, you've got 12 officially listed. I believe that. I've seen the books that are kept. So I believe that you've got 12 recorded incidents. But as we were campaigning and we were listening to what's happening out on farmland, what we were hearing, what was happening in neighborhoods that never had an impact like this before, when we were, this subject matter of taking homes, places that people generally buy and live in, and turning them into a commercial entity with people coming and changing their neighborhood. To me, I was looking for rules of licensing. What's that license look like? I was looking for recommendations on, if you're going to do this, it's got to be inspected at least yearly. I'm just saying this, by the fire department. You got this place that you've got, but you've only got a septic system that if you're out in the country, you only handle a family of 4. And now you're advertising far more than that. So because there's no rules and because there's no regulations, quite literally, it's the Wild West. And I was just looking for something more than having an engaging session over and over and over with people saying that I'm a stakeholder and I need to be heard. And yeah, sometimes council can be told, well, you're just making these decisions. Well, a lot of the times the ratepayers are saying, we want council to start making some of these decisions, to get some of these things put into place. And to me, the timeline of this, when I read the quarters that are going to pass by and so on, we have nothing in place. And I believe that the longer we go without something in place, and I know many in the room are aware of this, the municipality of Meaford could find itself in the same absolute position as the city of Montreal. There was a major problem with short-term rentals. They had no rules. So we need to have this, and we need to have the timeline quicker. And I'll back Councillor Bartley and every other member of this council, if it's money that it takes to start this thing harder and faster, do it right and make it well. And I'm all for that. And so all of these other things that everybody talks to us about, when you say there's unrecorded comments, you get unrecorded comments because the ratepayers reach out to their elected officials, and that's where they do their I can't say that.
Bitching.
That's where they have their strong opinions as to what is transpiring. Okay, so anyway, I was a little disappointed in this, and I want to move faster on it. So that's how I'm feeling.
Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to touch on the municipal accommodation tax once again, and just looking at our neighbors in the county, looking at Collingwood and Blue Mountains, Clearview Township, they're also considering municipal accommodation taxes. And in fact, Collingwood voted unanimously in favor of directing staff to investigate the implementation of a municipal accommodation tax, including community and industry stakeholder consultation. And they're asking staff to report back no later than September 2023. And if it's going to cost money to do that, but there is money to be made. And I know we're not Collingwood, but these are the numbers that I have in front of me. Staff say conservative estimates on the town stand to collect between 880,000 and 1.4 million a year from a 4% tax on traditional accommodation like hotel rooms. And there's a potential for another 400 to 880,000 if short-term accommodations like Airbnbs become legal in Collingwood and were included in municipal accommodation tax bylaw. I see that as a pretty big priority, and I'd like to discuss that with my fellow councillors and see if we want to add this to the project charter as an in-scope item.
Go ahead, Mr. White.
Thank you, Your Worship. On that, as we round out that part of the discussion, I would ask that if council's adding that to the scope, those numbers sound an awful lot like that included all their hotels and everything. So that is a much larger community, and you're talking about every type of accommodation. So those numbers, quite frankly, don't mean much here on scope scale. But if that's what we want to do, then let's make sure through this discussion, to be clear, if we're adding that, because you can apparently in the that tax structure, you can define which type of units are taxed. I don't want us, again, that's why you have the project charter. I don't want us to do a bunch of work when we come back and we only did it for Airbnbs, air quotes, and then we didn't do it for the motels, or we only did it for the motels, or what have you, right? Let's be clear on what it is. And that resolution by council was to only look at the tax, not all the other stuff. And it's taking them till September, and they have a whole bunch more staff. So I would argue the timeline as scoped is reasonable. We can change the scope and the timeline and make it faster, but let's be clear on what it is we're asking for.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. So what I'm hearing is every other municipality is doing this, a MAT tax. So it should be, paste and post documentation to get it going. Can it not be done countywide, or it has to be simpler than what I'm hearing?
Through your worship, what I understand is this municipality has to request the province that the tax be applied to this municipality. So it's on us, and that we individually have to consult with the operators and the community and do that consultation before we can ask the province to do it. So it's basically individually on us separately.
So the good news in my mind is that we have 0 hotels and 3 motels and some bed and breakfasts, and I don't know whether they're included or not. To me, bed and breakfasts are the big sort of losers in the whole process with Airbnbs. At any rate, I need to hear more from council here, what your thoughts are.
For you, Mr. Mayor, just as an example, because Councillor Ford had some numbers from Collingwood, I've just very quickly gone onto one of the motel websites in town, and they're currently renting out rooms for $120 a night. If we work on the basis of 4% being a municipal accommodation tax and approximately 200 nights a year being rented out, which I think is probably generous, then that's a grand total of $960 for the year per room. So, this is not nothing, but it's also not a huge amount.
There are a large number of Airbnbs in the municipality. Do we have any way at all of assessing that within, say, a 10-day period? Is there any way of finding out how many Airbnbs we have within 10 days? Yes,
as I noted, we got information through Grey County. We know exactly how many.
Can you tell us today?
I would have to go into that and dive into that research. I can't tell you that right now.
Then
I think the information I recall was about 200. But that's guessing. I have to go into the data.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. So you're saying we have to consult with I can see us consulting with the hotels, which wasn't the direction I was wanting to go. I can see we can consult with some Airbnbs. You're telling me we have to consult with these absent landlords and whatnot about the MAT tax?
Sorry, we have to consult with operators of short-term rental. Whether they're an absent landlord or not, it's really irrelevant. It's the actual taxing of short-term rentals that we have to consult with.
So we have to go to these absent landlords, find them somewhere in the city and say, do you want us to do a tax? Well, you know what the answer is going to be. We just can't say, let's do it.
So you, Mr. Mayor, I think conversation about municipal accommodation tax is really valuable, but I am worried that the council is aware that it won't change anything with regard to short-term rentals. It will just mean that short-term rentals have to pay a tax. So if you're looking at licensing or the short-term rentals being the problem, I would really recommend that you focus on that. We can come back to municipal accommodation tax at any time in the future, but establishing what you want to do about the part of the industry that you care about at the moment, to me, is more important than deciding to add 4% to something that would make some money, but wouldn't make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's time that we get some motions on the table and have some discussion on that. And I think, to Councillor Bartley's point, we need to put some money behind this. So I would move a motion that we put a budget towards this. I don't know what amount that needs to be, but I'm looking to someone from staff to tell us an amount that would get this moving ahead more quickly.
I think,
CAO?
just to reiterate what Rob said, we need to know, I think you could leave that to the end. We need to know what the charter and what the scope of study is going to be and the timing for us then to advise. So I would leave the money thing to the end. I mean, you can bring that forward, but let's talk. What else do you want to change? Like, do you want to make it due in Q3? The study to speed it up, and then we'll have to look at outside resources. Do you want to expand the scope of us looking at, as was highlighted, further scope on the economic impact? We might have to go and get independent consultants such as Hampson, who does our development charges, an economic expert to speak about the economic impacts, or might have to do our own research. So that's going to drive what the additional costs are going to be. So I would suggest you maybe look at some of those changes first, and then we can talk about the finances at the end.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you. And that takes me back to the motion of May 2020, where we talked about the impact of STRs on housing stock and inventories. So let's make sure that that is included. And I like the idea of Q3. If we can have this polished and ready to go by then, let's get at it. I think another discussion we need to have is the principal residence requirement. Do we want to do that? Do we want to define our SDI bylaws only being permitted in residences that are owned, and it's, Steve, you're away for a holiday, you can rent out your place for a month, instead of allowing these commercial operations to come in and have that impact that we're talking about on our housing stocks. So I would like to see that in the discussion.
I'm going to ask our clerk to jump in here because I suspect there may be a problem here.
No, there's no problem. I'm putting my clerk hat firmly on because I want to make sure that whatever council passes today, everybody's clear on the council side and on the staff side exactly what it is that we want. So I think I heard the Deputy Mayor start to make a motion about accelerating this timeline to be completed in Q3 of 2023. But what I want to make sure I understand, or everybody understands, is that Q3 2023 to finish what's in this charter, which is to present options to council? Or are you saying you want something in place to start doing by Q3 2023? Because those are very, very different things, would cost lots of different money.
Understood. It would be my hope, if council agrees with me, that we could have a completed bylaw by the end of Q3.
I think that's probably impossible, just because it's 3 months away, 3.5 months away.
CAO, you have a comment?
Just to expand on that, yeah, we won't be able to do all the necessary research and consultation and background within that time frame. Even if we look for a consultant to hire us, all consultants are busy and they're so what I would suggest, if council wants something sooner, just tell us to change the charter, to bring forward, we've heard the Lambton bylaw. Tell us to change the charter to bring forward a Lambton bylaw for a public meeting as consideration.
Okay. I have a question, if I may, just and I'm not sure if the clerk or what should answer, but the matter of whether or not there can be an Airbnb that is not your permanent residence, because we have a lot of purpose-built Airbnbs in our municipality.
So my understanding is that we should be careful, like, talking about Airbnbs, because that's one company. There's many companies. We're talking about short-term rentals. Any property anywhere owned in any way can be a short-term rental, because it's literally just that. Are you renting out something that you own for a period of less than 30 days?
I just don't know if we would be creating a nightmare for ourselves if we said that you can only have an Airbnb in your principal residence, because there are, as you know, so many purpose-built Airbnbs in the municipality. I'm just, does anybody have any notion on that? Councillor Yurig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. But I think that is exactly one of the goals we're trying to achieve. So to Matt's point, by the letter of the law, yes, anybody can. But again, a lot of these neighboring municipalities are adopting principal residence rules so that you are not getting people that are simply buying a large place and then renting it out wholesale, and they never live there at all. We're not, again, trying to dissuade Airbnbs. We are trying to legislate and control Airbnbs and the mechanism by which people can do that. So, and that goes back to your question about the municipal tax. No, are we going to chase people down? No, you are going to, again, create a legislation where you can say, here are the parameters under which you can do. And I think the municipal tax is a kick it down the road thing where hopefully, yeah, we can take advantage of that now, later. Your point is also apt that, yeah, we're not going to make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars like other municipalities. That doesn't mean we won't make something, and we should not dissuade or turn away from any potential income, as Mr. Greenfield said. So it's all about getting these things in place properly to get some kind of structure in place. And I agree wholeheartedly that if we get rid of the factory style where nobody ever lives there, that's step one, because it at least mitigates that potential.
I just don't understand. Does do those ones that exist, do they become grandfathered, or are they sort of going to be a blight on the landscape?
Yeah, and that, but we have those questions as well. We need to review with our legal counsel on enforcement and all that. If it's under the zoning bylaw and you've established legally under our current zoning bylaw, then we can't prohibit you under zoning. I don't know about licensing. Those will be questions to legal counsel on that.
Mr. Voigt?
So just kind of imagining here, the fastest would be somewhat, as Rob had mentioned, would be if council said, hey, let's adopt community X's approach. And we would look at that and say, well, for us, here's what we think the positives are, the negatives, the outcomes, the costs, bylaw, building official, fire inspection, all that stuff. Legal review of what are the impacts for, as is commonly referred to as grandfathered, but existing non-conforming uses. That gets us there really fast. But if we go back to the original questions and that, and some of the things that have been brought up, have we then been able to take the time to look at the impact on the industry right now? For example, if we said all of them had to be licensed and inspected, they all stop immediately. And then we just, as the speed with which they can do an application, including drawings, including fees, including getting into the building officials' inspection cycle, you'll be bringing them on way slow. So I'm mentioning that because we can go fast, but then impact the reality that this is part of our tourism industry. And then we got a whole other issues to deal with. Just something to consider. I think the reality is this is one of those difficult challenges that council has before them, because there's almost no way to make everyone happy in this, because it is a complex, multifaceted issue. So doesn't mean we can't address it. It just will look different.
Councillor Yurig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to your point, Robin, I think it's a great idea, taking an example. Now, again, many of us were at Roma. Everybody's citing time. So to your point, and that's apt. We can look at a municipality such as Tiny, who has gone through the growing pains, who has gone through this exercise. There are others who are doing what we're doing. We're trying to play catch up. So trying to turn that around in a quick turn is really difficult. I totally respect that. Looking at a Tiny who has already went through the power pain, reformatted and rejigged what they were doing to come up with whatever. I would almost suggest, instead of just choosing one, is that, so at Roma there was Prince Edward and there was Tiny, and we know Lambton through FCM is another good example. So to take three, look at these examples, take the greatest hits of what works from those, and then utilize that as a framework to try and move forward. You have to have a starting point somewhere, and you do that by learning from other people. So to me, that's a practical way to do it.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and that makes perfect sense to me, Councillor Urick. I mean, just, I will send this to you, so you all have the link for, Lambton Shores, but their application checklist is basically a one-pager. It's very simple. They accept hand-drawn plans for fire safety, site plan, and parking management. So they're trying to make it simple. So my hope is that, you know, if we can keep it somewhat simple as well, we can get through this licensing in an expeditious manner. But yes, let's look at the three that we have heard the most about and pull together what can work for Meaford.
And Mr. Voigt wants to push back.
Hand drawn, if we are doing inspections for fire, we cannot accept hand drawn. It needs to be properly dimensioned and scaled and inspected. There's no way that we can have people estimating the egress. Particular, this is more for the basement type units, which if we are eliminating the entire residence being rented and it's only truly accessory type units, they're going to be more of that. We need to have 2 scale drawings properly done because of the risk to life and property damage.
Councillor Forder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to follow up with that, so how is it other municipalities are accepting hand drawn and we refuse to do that? How does that I'm not sure how that works.
Through your worship, I can't speak to their choice on risk management, but I think it only makes sense if the building code says that your egress from a basement requires a window size of certain size and the drawing is not to scale or it's hand drawn and then we go there and it's wrong. That means also the inspections take longer and that there's no advantage, quite frankly. If we're looking at this as businesses, like any business, you take it seriously and do that. So maybe someone can do it with a hand sketch, but then Bart or Mr. Pilon shows up to do an inspection. It's like, yeah, you got it wrong. And then you fail the inspection. And then you got to pay for another inspection. Where's the advantage? Do it right. Slow is steady, steady is smooth, and smooth is fast. Be thorough.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we should always be cautious when just talking about things from other places, when the choices that they've made somewhere else in the Lambton Shores documents. I've got the fire plan for fire safety must be displayed in a prominent location within the short-term rental. So I very much doubt that's a crayon drawing, which I know are some of the things that we come in. But I'm just trying to get clarity on what it is that we wanted to do and get a motion on the floor, because you know what Councillor Urick was just talking about gathering examples and assessing them. Well, that is what's written in the project charter right now under Q3 for gathering and analysis of examples from other municipalities of potential approaches to manage, address negative impacts of short-term rental accommodations. So if that's what we want to do, that's already in this project charter. So if you just if you want to go straight to that, then let's have a motion to remove the public consultation from this process. If that's the bit that you just want to go straight to the bylaw being presented kind of thing.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, not jumping hoops, trying to get a starting point. Right now with the charter, we don't even have the starting point. Getting those 3 is the first part to getting to engaging with the public and having their input based on something factual, as opposed to getting together with the public before having anything in Q3 that's investigated. What are you discussing? When you have this conversation first, or you do the research first, then do the public consultation and say, here's 3 examples that work. So what can we glean from this? And again, staff will at that point in time take out, here's things that we think work for our municipality, because it may not work. What may work in Tiny may not work here. So it is about still, and it's about timing. So you're right.
So then in that case, if that's what we're trying to do, I think the motion is to move what's listed here under Q3 ahead of the public consultation. And that's again, a pretty simple motion.
Yeah.
Let's move that motion at this point. Who's moving that?
Well, can I make that motion?
Yes.
That we expedite the researching of neighboring and other municipalities to try and determine best practices that we could utilize prior to doing any public consultation, so that it can be discussed at that level before moving on to the next level.
That's seconded by Councillor Forder. Any further discussion? Are you ready to vote on that?
Through your worship, can you define when you want it?
Very soon.
You can say once this is as soon as practicable. That's okay. Or as first priority, like that's okay. I just, again, someone somewhere will think, oh, that only means Q2.
Yep.
And apparently you all mean tomorrow. So crystal clear. As soon as practical, please and thank you.
Okay, so do you have that motion, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, I have. I understand that where we're going and can write it down when we write it down, but basically it's bring forward the analysis of other examples prior to the public consultation and do so as soon as possible.
Any discussion? Can we vote? All in favor? So there's one small step for man. And woman, yes. Councillor Bartley.
Yeah, and I'm probably premature on this because we're not making bylaws now, but what I want, what Steve Bartley wants is some of the strictest bylaws in the county on Airbnbs, absent landlords and whatnot, and the ability to shut them down if necessary. That's bottom line what I want.
Okay, I think that, the staff has that for the record, but other motions that we could move to expedite this process. We need to give staff as much direction as possible here. Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, thank you. And I think the next one comes back to budget then, that staff explore through this exercise of looking at the three that we've determined and understanding then of what budget would be required to expeditiously move us forward to the creation of an actual bylaw. And if that means we have to hire a consultant or a temporary staff member or whatever we have to do.
Mr. Voigt?
Through your worship. Does this then, with jumping ahead to a list of 3 or 4 that we're going to do first, does council want to reduce the amount of other data collection, which is sort of also very much linked to working with the stakeholders? I'm just trying to get a handle on, the report that Rob has mentioned a couple of times literally just came to our email like last week, right? So are we okay with just using those available resources and assuming that yes, it's we're not building a Swiss watch here. If we're off by a couple of units here or there, that's not going to change the direction. So using available resources can speed up the process overall. It does leave potentially some gaps if it wasn't done well, but I think the source tells us that it was, and it means then our cost would be lesser. So if council wants to perhaps look at of refining that part of the project to say that the research of the local context is using already available data.
Councillor Yuri, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. First off, yes, I agree with you that, let's not reinvent the wheel. If we can expedite matters by using what we think is credible information, then we should do that, totally. I wanted to say one more thing, and this is going to allude to Tiny, and this is a caution to everybody around the table and listening, and everybody that's concerned about this issue. So Tiny has gone through this, and they went through it like 4 or 5 years ago. They met a number of great difficulties, and then they revamped it, and they're moving forward. There is a class action suit that is being entertained by STA owners who feel that unjustly they're being deprived of. So this is not a simple matter that is very easy, cut and dried, bang, go. It is, the legislations are in place with these other municipalities, but be aware, there are other entities that are fighting this because of grandfathering wishes or desires to do business. So this is not going to be easy, but we do have to have a starting point. But I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that this will be fraught with many concerns as this goes along.
Did you want to say something, Ron?
Just from a planning perspective, that's why the consultative process is very important, because if you don't do the consultation and then you get a class action suit, it's because you didn't, a lot of times it's because you didn't consult with us. And that's why it's very important as part of this process.
So oh, go ahead, Councillor Bell. I just wonder, are we going to speed up the process if we leave a municipal accommodation tax out of the, you believe that it is going to speed it up and we can actually start that process at any time we wish anyway? Sorry, phase 2. Okay, we need a motion to cover that if council is.
No, we don't. A municipal accommodation tax isn't part of the scope of this project, and the reason
so
why
we
it
just
isn't
leave
is
it
for
out.
exactly that reason.
Okay, reluctantly in my mind, but anyway, that's Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just coming back to the 3 or 4 other communities that will be explored, I'm just hoping that included in that will be a conversation with the Airbnb people, because I know from speaking to them that there is a lot of really valuable information there. So I hope that's on the list.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to ask a question on the building department, chief building inspector. We had comments here about not being able to submit a handwritten sketch. It would be refused. Legalities of not being accurate and definitive. I'm just going to speak personally. The municipality of Meaford has no idea what my machine shop's footprint looks like. It is not on registry. No one knows. I've had building permits. There's been things that have been done, but no one knows. And so now we have someone who has a home and they wish to do that. And now it would be that if they do this drawing, they have to submit an engineered drawing for what is in existence. I take it on a home that had a building permit. What is the thing about not being able to just do something in its general format? And Mr. Voigt, you said, what is the comfort level of risk management of this municipality? Okay, so risk management right now, we have no rules. And that's a big risk in my mind. We have nothing in place. So I looked at that when you thought about that when you said about drawings and submitting them to the chief building inspector and so on. And I thought, with all of the comments, and this isn't facetious, this isn't sarcasm, but if somebody's doing something, and Mr. Voigt, you've heard this, if you're going to do a building permit, it's going to take a long time, seemingly, in the municipality of Meaford. That's not a new comment. You've heard that yourself. I know you have. So why is it that we have to insist on something like that on a place that already exists? I'm just asking.
To your worship, what we're looking at is potential licensing. So we're looking at granting permission through licensing to do something that, so we're giving approval to something to be used. I don't so much as it's building official, it's more fire and ensuring that the necessarily the fire or the exits are correct. I guess that's building code as well. So we're adding a use. We've heard from the public, these are commercial uses, they're not residential uses. And that's what a lot of, with my experience when I worked for Town of Blue Mountains, that's what it's more about, is how can the fire department, how can the building department be satisfied through this licensing process that all the life safety matters are in place with regard to short-term rentals.
I think as well, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this might be a bit of a red herring at this stage, because whilst both Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Voigt are saying that that is something that we would recommend, council can always do whatever council wants to do within the limits of the law. So if we were at the stage where we were bringing forward a bylaw and the criteria in the bylaw said clause 27B you must provide engineered drawings and I think Mr. Voigt said scale drawings. He didn't say engineered drawings because those are very different things. If the clause in the bylaw said you must provide scale drawings, you could then delete that if you wanted to, because we would have made that recommendation based on the risk assessment that we do. Council has the right to make any changes to bylaws within the limits of the law at any time. So I think focusing too much on that right now sort of takes us down an alleyway that is ahead of where we're at, unless this council wants to say that in scope or out of scope is any formalization of a design process. But I don't think you want to do that. I think you want to see what other municipalities are doing. And then that's one of the things that we will be looking at that others do and what they do and what their assessment of the risk was.
Can you go ahead, Mr. White?
One thing I'll add to that again, and this still hasn't been codified in this, but assuming we're looking at that you can only rent something out if you are a resident there, then it's again likely a second unit. However, that's defined in the building code, and I can't speak that closely to that. But in my early conversations with our chief building official, this then through that licensing process, that unit then becomes a commercial use, as well as from the way the building code looks at it, which would mean different kinds of fire separation. Your HVAC system might have to have different kinds of dampers and all that kind of thing for smoke moving between units, all that kind of stuff as well. The reality then means if we're going down that path, you want to hand draw that? Sure, your drawings probably are not going to work for what you want to do. And as Matt said, that is not the hiccup in this whole thing. It would be the inspections of what's being built. So we'll bring it as forward, but just know we still need to codify that. The only change we've made so far is that we're accelerating the research forward. We haven't changed anything else yet. So we need to get those things in, as Councillor Bartley has mentioned, and get that going so that we perhaps don't have to deal with the issue that that you've brought up as well.
Councillor Yurg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, all good points. Again, the only thing I would say is you've made one comment in there talking about if it's going to be a private resident and it's going to be a secondary unit. Not necessarily according, again, if you look at those other municipalities or what Airbnbs are, it is somebody that just needs to live in there. And the kind of the barometer has been 3 months is what you can rent your place out if you live there. So it's not a secondary unit that you have to make sure. You literally can walk away from your house. Somebody can rent it depending on the bylaw. So it's not you're creating a secondary unit, it has to be whatever, but the whole place again has to meet whatever safety standards, and ironically they're living in it. So yeah, it has to meet that standard. So you're right, it's going to be again, we need to look at these other municipalities, see what they're doing, compare, because again, cart way before horse here, where you get into the minutia very easily, and we need to determine what these things are before we start kind of reinvent them in this form right now.
Does anybody have another motion ready at this point you want to bring forward? If I'm going to ask Mr. Voigt, how much have we moved the needle by in terms of the time frame to a draft bylaw?
Minimally, because
Yep.
all we've done is shift things around. You've got August. Council takes a break in August. That means that certain things can't happen. So that automatically pushes it past that.
So
we still
give me
need to make
some-
a couple changes before we can maybe say, fine, and I'm making up a number here. Well, maybe I'll just say X amount of dollars to maybe hire someone. Well, we got to write that RFP. We got to post it minimum 2 weeks. You get some responses. You can do a 1 week turnaround, maybe. The earliest someone can be sort of on site starting something is 2 weeks after that. That is a 5-week process if we leave here this afternoon starting that. And I think there would have to be a motion to figure out how to move the money as well before that. Like there's a lot of moving parts here. So we haven't done much. I think council's
so can
discussion about community engagement just
should just say, just specifically, have 2 meetings or have 1 meeting, like just crush it down. From what I'm hearing, this council is very much, you want to look at those 3 examples and you'd like the public to have one more shot to talk about it. And guess what? We can do it all in one big giant meeting. There will be people who can't make it, who won't be happy. That's what it is. And we can crush it down by probably 6 weeks right there.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. The other thing that I think I've heard, which I think we would need a motion for, is one of the things that was specifically out of scope is actually implementation of any proposed action. But what I think I'm hearing is that you want a bylaw adopted as part of this. So we would need a motion to say that the adoption of a bylaw was one of the steps in this. Because that, again, that changes from presenting information by the end of the thing to actually having done it. Because even that adoption is committee of the whole and then council, and that takes some time and so on. So I think just being fully
Thank you for
aware of that.
That's good. Deputy Mayor?
Your worship, thank you. Can we not simultaneously, while staff is doing this research on the 3 or 4 other communities, get a survey out to the public? Because, you know, as you said, Director Voigt, 1 or 2 meetings, there'll be people who would not be able to attend. And in the charter, there was suggestion of a survey. Can we not get that out fairly soon and allow the public that longer opportunity to participate?
Go
ahead.
The mayor, we just moved the research of types of bylaws. I don't think we would do that until we actually had the bylaws to seek that information for them. I think that tweak has timed it, switched it around of the questionnaire, but it can be part of the consultation process.
Are you prepared, Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. I want this done as soon as possible, but for the matter of 6 weeks, to get it done properly is what I want done. And I think you can't go to the public till you have something to present to them. That has to come forward. And we're here and we're doing our damnedest to push this forward faster. But we could be shooting ourselves in the foot over 6 weeks. This has to be sent to the public. I think there has to be 2 meetings. You miss both of them, well, then that's your fault. But you should be able to get to one of them. That's my opinion. Is I think we should push it for 2 public meetings.
Councillor Bell?
Along the lines of my fellow councillor Bartley, Mr. Voigt, I really liked what you did. I very truly did. I liked the work that you did when you reached out to people for our official plan. Now, you'll know the timeline of the official plan, but when you were reaching out, you had different forms of media that you were using to get feedback. Can you tell me what you could maybe do along that format to engage the people? Is that another possibility of how we can gather the people's voice?
Yes, go ahead.
Through your worship, I'll note here, because this was also mentioned by one of the speakers earlier, that there was, and part of that, what happened with the official plan is that we reached out to all the current sitting advisory committees of council. This specifically says that we'll have a meeting with the Economic Development Advisory Committee. So that is a thing that's going to take X amount of time. The challenge in this process is not going to be to hear from the general public who are saying that there's a problem in that. I think they've made that clear. There's passion behind that. It's how do we find, again, another speaker here today, the right forum for folks that are part of this industry. And that's going to take a bit of time. So we can do public meetings. We can, we can reach out, do a whole bunch of phone calls, all that kind of stuff. But then we get back down to the initial thing where like the resources for this right now is me and one other person. I've also got the Main Streets organization to launch. I've also got my entire other work program, and this other person who's going to help isn't here yet. They've just been hired. So we'll do our utmost But I think it needs to be, and this is not to sort of cover our butts, it's council tell us 2 meetings, questionnaire and a thing, and go. Because I can tell you from 25 years of doing this, when I only have 1 meeting or don't do the questionnaire or do the other thing, council will call me on the carpet and say, why didn't you do that as well? Because someone said they couldn't make it. I'm putting this, council wants to go fast. I'm pushing back saying, tell me how many meetings you want and what forum. You've heard a lot. You've heard the most you ever hear in terms of a process, I would suggest, through the election cycle. This is the year where you are most have your finger on the pulse of the community. You've all very clearly said during those 2 planning sessions, today, other times through emails and that you kind of know what the issues are. Trust what you've heard. Let us make sure that we're not missing anyone. And go.
Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will say, Rob, to your point, so ironically, we've kind of moved this around. Ironically, the way the charter was set up originally, there was going to be the public discussion. Q3 was when the research about these other municipalities was going to be in play. They weren't even going to be involved in that conversation because that was the last step before presentation to council. What we're trying to do is make sure that we get all the facts in front of the people so that this can be discussed in a rational way instead of going into an open forum and just say, let's go shotgun. If we can narrow down that scope, we've hopefully we've mitigated that to a degree, and now we have a control mechanism and a controlled audience that we can say, here are some real life choices. What can we do with that? So I'm hoping on that basis that escalates it. Now, when you're saying 2 meetings, are you talking 2 meetings 1 week apart? Are you talking 2 meetings a month apart? Because again, everything, you're right, you're saying it's all incumbent upon us. I like the idea, to your point, that it's 2 weeks because I think public needs a chance to engage, but do we need to spread that over a long period of time? So if we can kind of minimize that, try and get this information up front, minimize the period of time with the public engagement. In a perfect world, to me, you've got right now Q4 presentation to council. It would be lovely if it came in sometime before that. I gave you the motion before and we literally said as soon as practically possible. I still live by as soon as practically possible. I just hope we try and do as many things to make it as soon as practically possible by making all these envelopes, you know, as time laden as they can. The other point you did make is that I don't know where we are with this ED person that hopefully we're getting on board, because this to me falls under not just planning, because it is a planning thing, but this is also an economic development bailiwick. And I'm hoping that that gives you more resources to utilize in trying to engage this.
CAO.
Yeah, this timeline has been put together based on that economic development person who starts on June the 12th. So they've been retained. They start June the 12th, and they are going to be the one key focus. I think it's ultimately we have heard and continue to hear and acknowledge that this is council's #1 priority. And we will make it council's and deliver it as fast as we possibly can. However, there will be other stuff that needs to be done, wants to be done, that we will have to evaluate and park and set aside so we can deliver on council's #1 priority based on, there's more than just Rob and that, there's lawyers, there's the clerk's department who's responsible for running meetings. So we just have to look at those options in doing that. And just as long as it's acknowledged by council in delivering this #1 priority, that we need to evaluate that.
Mr. Greenfield.
Thanks. Okay, as far as numbers of meetings, quite often planning meetings, so on and so forth, we are legislated to have 1 meeting. There's no legislation controlling this number of meetings. Is there? Am I?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so we could cut it back to 1. I'm a little bit worried if we have 2, the first meeting could be very anti-Airbnb, clean it up, shut them down, so on and so forth. Okay, in 2 weeks' time, then we might hear quite a different story coming in 2 weeks from the Airbnb supporters. It's just a suggestion. I think this issue does not go back. Mr. Foster mentioned September 26, 2022. This issue goes back much further than that. We've had Airbnb concerns for at least 2 or 3 years. We need to get closer to making a decision on this. I think if we can get away with one public meeting, supposing it starts at 1 in the afternoon and goes to 5, let's, so be it. We're asking for the public and those folks who operate Airbnbs or who want to in the future operate them to get their comments in, and by the time we have that public meeting, I'm hoping we may not have them all in, but we'll certainly have a lot of them. We already have had a number of them. So I'd love to see this report, this presentation to council come back in September with the hope that by the end of this year, we can have something, an Airbnb bylaw or whatever you want to call it, in place. I'm not trying to rush this. I hear staff and I appreciate your comments because there is a lot here. But anyway, to make a long story short, in order to expedite the process, I'd go with one meeting. There is out in the public, there's urgency here. Now, that doesn't mean you shortchange, but we do need to move this ahead as quickly as possible. And if that means going to one meeting and have it done with, as opposed to then having a second meeting 3 or 4 weeks later, I'll just advocate the one meeting.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I just heard a motion. And I think the motion was reduce the public consultation listed in the project charter to one public meeting.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, it's been seconded by Councillor Bartley. Any discussion? Deputy Mayor?
And I assume that there would still be a survey, that's a separate means of gathering information from the public, Councillor Greenfield. So my question to you is, in relation to your motion, there would still be a survey separate from the public meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So I think, Mr. Mayor, then I've just heard a different motion, which is to reduce the public consultation listed in the project charter to one public meeting and a survey.
And I'm seeing sort of deer eyes in the lights. Is a survey something that is, takes a copious amount of time?
Through your worship, no. So first of all, this is just me being a nerd. We always refer to things as questionnaires. Surveys are statistically accurate. This will not be. It's a questionnaire. So yes, we can do that relatively quick. For the reduction of this engagement process, and I thank Councillor Bell for his appreciation of what we did for the official plan. I would guess that we're going to hear the same voices we've already heard from on a questionnaire. We're not going to hear the people that are being, I believe, from my professional opinion, being cut out on an expedited thing are the businesses themselves, the industry. Just know that I'm making a hazarding that guess. A questionnaire typically is not responded to by
the whatever association of something, right? They're more formal. Maybe that's a bit of outreach we need to do to make sure they show up to the public meeting, but we can do that relatively quickly. The longer it is, the more data there is to crush, the shorter it is, the more to the point it is, it can be done fast.
Councillor Yuri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I agree with you, but so the because you're right, and I think the only thing I think there's value in that in having both forums is because if we set a finite date where people can't make it want a voice, then they don't have an option. Whereas that, at least I know historically through chamber and watching other questionnaires that have come out of council, our responses is not an inordinately high number. Even when we did the major one a little while ago, I mean, it was a very small percentage actually responded. So if it provides even an opportunity for somebody who can't be there to give us an opportunity to say something, that's of value. So I think there is, because I honestly don't believe you're going to get, your point is apt that, yeah, you're going to get probably a lot of the same voices. Do I think you're going to get 11,000 people in the questionnaire? No. So as long as it's probably not going to be too onerous, I think it gives fairness to do too.
Are we ready to vote on this motion? Go ahead, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. Now, if the person that brought the motion forward wants to amend his motion to what the clerk said, because he hasn't yet, I would, as a seconder, second the amendment.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. Let's get some statement made here.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is,
We won't call that an amendment because the move is saying it. The motion on the floor is reduce the amount of public consultation listed in the project charter to one public meeting and a questionnaire.
okay. All in favor? And that is carried.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I'm still looking for a motion to say that a bylaw should be tabled for council's consideration at the end of this process.
Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Bartley. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mayor Kettner, and I wanted to say this before it was closed. I come into today's meeting expecting staff pushback. I didn't see that today. I seen he's worked together with us, and I want to tip my hat to the staff because I seen collaboration. Like we work together on this. Thank you.
Sorry, I should probably clarify what I just said, Mr. Mayor.
I can take that back.
You moved and seconded this, so see what you think. We should say that you want a licensing bylaw brought forward because there are different bylaws that we could do, and I want to be again very specific about what the goal is.
Now, does that mean that a municipal accommodation tax is back in? Okay, it's a
No.
different thing.
But-
Okay, all right. Okay, are you ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried. Now, have we, made any real progress here?
So I think that we have done a number of things, and really I've just been focusing on the process/schedule that's listed with the things. So we have moved the gathering and analyzing of examples above the public consultation. We've reduced the public consultation to one public meeting and a questionnaire. And we've said that at the end, but based on the presentation to council, we will bring forward a licensing bylaw. So that means that, following the analysis and following the public consultation, that won't be a report that says here's lots of options. That'll be a report that says if you want a licensing bylaw, this is the licensing bylaw that we think you should have.
Have we, or do we want to put a budget figure in here to assist staff?
So my personal opinion, and I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues here, is that the things that you've done are not things that we can really find somebody to do in any fast period of time. Rob talked about having to, if we want an outside consultant to do this, it takes us longer to get that person than it does to do half of these things. If if to hire a staff member to do this, that's not going to work because for the same reason of doing that, and it's such a short-term project. So really what I think you've done in terms of the money is said, stop doing other things and do this first.
I think I agree with that. Mr. Armstrong?
Yeah, I just want to give perspective on timing. So in 4 days, we're 1 month out of Q3. So we're already very close past 2 into Q3. Q4 starts in October. We've already heard that we will do it as fast as possible. So we will try to get it in advance because I know when we get into December, council's going to have another priority, November, December, and that's the budget again. So we'll be busy doing that as well. So you have in the basis of Q4 starts in October. If it includes the bylaw with recommendations, we'll try to get it as fast as we can. And I think from a time perspective, I think that's the best that we can do.
Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So devil's advocacy, yeah, why would be great because that will potentially impact the budget because there will be things. Now we're talking about 200 potential licenses. So this is again why we're trying to have that in place for that so that we can put real time numbers to these things to work forward. So yeah, again, as soon as possible, I'm not holding feet to fire, but it is important because it's going to impact a lot of things, not just Airbnbs and STRs, but literally our budget. And there's going to be now new numbers involved. So we do need these kind of as fast as possible.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Voigt, it's just reminded me of one more that you talked about that you might want a motion for, which was to use existing data only in our analysis. So if somebody wanted to move and second that, if that's something you want to do.
Mr. Urick?
I will make the motion to use existing information only. I think Grey County has probably got is a valid and viable and good source. So yes, we should definitely go with what exists.
That's seconded by Councillor Bartley.
Yes, Mayor Kentner, I'll second it because it doesn't matter if we got 200 or 234 or 271. It doesn't matter. The bylaw is the bylaw.
All in favor of that motion? That is carried.
So, Mr. Mayor, if there's nothing further, or whenever we get to where there's nothing further, you're basically now going back to the main motion that was on the floor, which was to approve the project charter. So you're now approving it as amended.
As amended, yes. Okay. Are we ready to do that? Okay. That motion's already on the floor. Mr. Clerk?
Yes.
Okay, so you just need a vote from us.
Yes.
Any last words? All in favor? And that is passed. Thank you, everyone. I hope that, go ahead, Mr. Voigt.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as the work is now beginning on this, and I don't get to be in front of the camera often. Oh, yeah, that was good. There we go.
Oh, yes, sir. This is committee of the whole. We go to county council in 2 weeks.
Oh, yes. Yes, okay.
We will start the work, but
this gives me a chance to say to the public, as we've said, even with every other issue that comes before council and when staff is working on it, saying the same thing over and over again in multiple different ways doesn't help. It just clogs up the review of the data. If you've already told us about your feelings on this, that's great. We've got it. You don't need to send it in email, then letter, then smoke signal. The characteristics of what you've said are just as clear the first time as they are every other time, because we want to hear from everybody, and your points either are valid and council will appreciate them, or council will choose to not when the time comes. But we don't need to hear from it 1,000 different ways. But I'd like to get as many people out there responding to this work that's going to happen. If you love these things, if you don't, if you want to open one, if you have one, it doesn't matter. Get them to start sending information
for the time being to me, and then we'll figure out how else to direct that.
I'm going
But let's
to,
get this ball moving.
I'm going to suggest to counselors that you talk to anybody you know who is in business that is concerned about this issue and poll them and try and get their input and pass it on. I think, you know, we all have rubbed shoulders with a lot of people in business, and we should do that. I'd like to thank the public, members of the public who came out today. I hope you see that there is a sense of urgency about this, and I can assure you many other matters. You know, so we often have some spirited conversations with input and pushback from both sides of the horseshoe. So thank you very much for doing that. And we have to move on. The next item is from Community Services, and the recommendation is the Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford direct the Mayor and CAO to convene a group of local event organizers to discuss the sesquicentennial. And yes, that's the next item on the agenda. Need a motion to put that on the floor. Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Forder. Discussion, questions? Maybe Councillor Greenfield, this would be a good time for you to speak up.
Thank you, Your Worship. And first of all, thanks to staff for bringing this forward, for presenting this. I think it's a great way to hopefully get the ball rolling concerning our sesquicentennial celebrations. Yes, everyone, we are going to still have a town of Meaford next year in 2024. And I do believe that is something to be celebrated. Hopefully we can get as many interested groups as possible coming forward. I don't want this to be only a town of Meaford celebration. I'm hoping we can reach out to the entire municipality to certainly send their best wishes, but come and be involved, come and partake with this. I like the idea of a meeting in the near future. I know it's not just all that easy to schedule a meeting, but hopefully we'll leave that up to the mayor and staff. And if I can be of any assistance, I'd be glad to. Thank you.
Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's already been for the last 2 years, Canada Day event planning kind of sessions been happening on a regular basis. So I'm hoping this is basically kind of a continuation of that. I'm surprised we're formalizing this because that was kind of done all along, and there's been right now we're in plans for Canada Day 2023.
Mr. Mayor, I think this is more than that. I think the group that you're talking about, and I know that you're part of, Councillor Urick, is very much focused on the Canada Day activities. And whilst Canada Day obviously will be one of the things where sesquicentennial is being celebrated, I think the hope from doing this by bringing together people, not necessarily the people who are on the group organizing Canada Day, but the people who are organizing other events in the community throughout the year, then they might theme their events about the sesquicentennial as well. So we may have a scarecrow invasion that the theme is Meaford through the ages, for instance, or things like that. So I think it's a similar idea to what we've been doing for the Canada Day celebrations, but it's designed to sort of get the other events hopefully to buy into the sesquicentennial idea.
Maybe.
Ironically, they are all there already. So the interesting thing about this community, and we have a great community with great groups because they all come together as it is. So the irony is yeah, pretty much all those groups you can name are already sitting around the table. So I'm hoping it's an expansion of that to great success to yeah, make sure that 150 is great.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Harley, for this. When you have, you'll be involved with this to talk to the folks that you're going to be, sort of spearheading this. I want to have you impress the idea that artwork, things take away for folks who come. I'm a collector and I have an unopened original 1974, produced by the Amarok, the medallion. It's unbroken. And I'm not gonna let anybody peel it open. But it's kind of cool, isn't it? It's a medallion. I think, Mr. Mayor, you've got a plate. I've got a plate too that says about that. So there are things that people will be, I want you to encourage people when you have that group to do some artistic flair for this. And you said about including all of the municipality. I fully support that. So in that, I'm sure that even when you look at the new coat of arms, that flair, the apples, the boats, the wheel, this can be pulled off really well. So thank you, Harley.
Okay, ready to vote? All in favor? And thank you very much. And thank you, staff, for a great idea to help us get this some momentum on this. Item C is a request for lease of parkland. The recommendation is that Committee of the Whole recommend the Council of the Municipality of Meaford, one, enact a bylaw to authorize the execution of a lease agreement for part of 439005 Sydenham Lakeshore Drive with ATEL Networks, Inc. And two, direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to authorize the execution of a municipal access agreement with ATEL Networks, Inc. once finalized. Need a motion to put that on the floor. Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bartley, all in favor? I guess we don't have to do that. No, okay. Not until we've discussed it. So questions for staff on this or comments? I think everybody understands that the report was, very clear. So are you ready to vote? All in favor? And we are. Thank you very much. Next is item E, Development Services, a deeming bylaw request that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we've got the emergency management program before that.
I beg your pardon.
The
sorry.
emergency management program comes before the deeming bylaw.
I beg your pardon. I did. And, I know that, you've had a very, very long day and several long days. So I don't want to, prolong this any longer. So the recommendation is that Committee of the Whole, one, adopt the emergency management program and plan, and two, update the appointment of the emergency management program committee. So Brittany Sheridan, congratulations on all the work you've done in the last while, and the floor is yours.
Perfect, thank you.
So, you move in a second to put it on the floor, please.
Okay, motion moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Bell.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Mayor and fellow councillors. As I believe most of you know who I am, but for those that are watching, my name is Brittany Sheridan, and I'm the Protective Services and Community Emergency Management Coordinator for the municipality. And I'm here today to provide you information on our mandatory emergency management program. I do want to provide a little bit of a warning before I start my presentation. And as the mayor can attest to, emergency management is filled with many acronyms. So throughout my presentation, I will try to pronounce the full name and the acronym. I also want you to keep in mind that this presentation was developed a few weeks ago. And I have not had time to adjust it with regards to what we are currently dealing with. So the municipalities are legislated through the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act to have an emergency management program that helps to ensure that the municipality and members of the public are prepared as much as possible for a potential emergency. The Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act requires municipalities to develop and implement an emergency management program that consists of a plan, training, exercises, and public education. The Act also requires that municipalities appoint a Community Emergency Management Coordinator, which is a CEMC, who is an employee and is responsible for coordinating the program, reviewing the plan, conducting training, and the annual exercise. Municipalities are also required to formally adopt an emergency management program through the passage of bylaw. The current bylaws that pertain to the emergency management here in our municipality are to adopt the program and plan, the appointment of the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, the appointment of the Emergency Management Program Committee, which is the EMPC, and the Emergency Mutual Assistance Agreement with Grey County and participating Grey County municipalities. So as the CMC, the list in front of you on the board there is what guides my focus each year and include reviewing and updating the plan, reviewing and updating the HIRA, which is the Hazard Identification Risk Assessment, and the CI, which is the critical infrastructure. Planning and conducting training, as well as exercises, meeting with the EMPC, which is the Emergency Management Program Committee, and educating the public on how they can prepare for emergencies through public education. And then at the end, submitting all of that documentation to EMO, which is Emergency Management Ontario, at the end of the year. So the Act does require that all municipalities develop a plan that outlines how it will respond to emergencies. The plan is a detailed document that identifies the Municipal Emergency Control Group, which is the MECG, and includes their roles and responsibilities, notification procedures, emergency operations, and the locations of our EOCs, which is the Emergency Operations Centers. The plan must be reviewed annually by the CEMC and the committee and adopted by council at least once per term of office. So under the Act, every municipality in Ontario is required to establish an Emergency Operations Center, which is known as an EOC. Those EOCs must be equipped with the appropriate technological and telecommunication systems. It's essential to the process of providing centralized direction and coordination on emergency operations. Here in our municipality, we have a primary EOC and an alternate EOC location, as what Councillor Bell was talking about earlier today. These locations have been chosen based on both being within urban and rural and having backup power supply. So our primary EOC location is the Meaford Fire Hall, and our alternate EOC location is here at Council Chambers. As you can see on the screen there, there's a picture of a black cabinet. Each one of these EOCs is equipped with a black cabinet, and within that cabinet, there are copies of the emergency plan and contact lists, MECG member kits, blankets, pillows, cots, first aid kits, personal hygiene kits, food, water, maps, flashlights, office supplies, and more. So the hazard identification and risk assessment, are also known as the HIRA, identifies and assesses the various hazards and risks to public safety and that what could happen or is most likely to happen in our municipality. The HIRA can assist in preparing for the worst or most likely hazards, which allows for the additional creation of emergency plans and procedures and provides topics for exercises and training. Each year, our Emergency Management Program Committee, or the EMPC, reviews and approves the HIRA. And currently, our top hazards identified within the municipality are winter weather events, infectious disease events, extreme heat, fire, wastewater and water distribution issues, and cyber attacks. Which my next point is, which are two of these hazards have been part of our current emergency. The next thing is the critical infrastructure list, which is also known as the CI. This list identifies facilities and other elements of infrastructure that could be at risk or affected during an emergency. This may include sectors within the food and water, telecommunications, electrical, oil and gas supply, financial services, transportation, and our health system. So all members are required to complete training and demonstrate an adequate level of knowledge in the program, plan, notification, operational procedures, and the EOC. Past training has included presentations from 211 and our local amateur radio emergency services group, as well as interactive group activities, videos, and courses put on through EMO, which is Emergency Management Ontario. So to meet compliance, at minimum, we must assemble our Municipal Emergency Control Group, the MECG, for a tabletop exercise annually. Exercises allow us the opportunity as players to carry out our roles and responsibilities that be expected of us during a real emergency. They also help to familiarize us as staff on their emergency management roles. It identifies gaps within our plan and identifies areas where more training would be beneficial. Past exercises have included tabletop scenarios and a joint exercise with Grey County Social Services, who are responsible for evacuation centers during a declared emergency. To note, in 2019, we did do an exercise that saw a fire taking place in our low lift pump down at the water treatment plant. And a lot of the planned inputs and outputs that came from that exercise actually happened during this emergency. One of them being that we would contact Ice River Springs to supply us water. Yeah.
Just a quick question. So since we just did that, do you still have to do an exercise if we've actually gone through this? Because it seems to kind of negate the need to do one since we've just.
There is no better exercise than what we've done right now.
Right,
So we declared and all the proper information was sent to Emergency Management Ontario. So we through that can be exempt. I will still include it in our annual submission to show all of kind of the things that we've done and showcase that. But no, this is our exercise. So we are required by the Act to have an Emergency Management Program Committee, which is the EMPC. Currently, our committee is comprised of the CEMC, the alternate CEMC, CIO, mayor, directors, fire chief, and the EIO, which is the Emergency Information Officer. The committee meets 2 to 3 times a year and oversees the development, implementation, maintenance, and review of the Emergency Management Program and attends training as required. So public education is also,
Sorry, Brittany, I apologize. I just wanted to go back to that and ask, does that still include Councillor Bell and myself?
no. So the Municipal Emergency Control Group and the Emergency Management Program Committee are 2 separate entities. So the committee is the one that overall oversees the implementation review of the plan and program. The control group is who is called upon when there is an emergency. So public education is also a mandatory component of the emergency management program. There's no regulated standard that defines how it must be conducted, and therefore we're free to adopt our own approach. The point of the public education program is aimed at raising the level of public preparedness during emergencies. Past public initiatives have included ads in the community guide, participating in Emergency Preparedness Week, which is the first full week in May, and displaying and handing out information through events held with the Meaford Fire Department. So to achieve compliance, all required documentation, which I just spoke about, is submitted to Emergency Management Ontario, EMO, at the end of the year. Our field officer then reviews it, provides feedback, and advises whether compliance was achieved. I'm happy to report that at the beginning of this month, I did receive confirmation from Emergency Management Ontario that compliance was achieved in 2022. Okay, on to the new plan additions. So as can be read in the supporting council report, the Emergency Management Program Committee is recommending a change to be made within our plan to our existing Municipal Emergency Control Group structure. Through past exercises, feedback, and review with the Emergency Management Program Committee, it's been identified that our Municipal Emergency Control Group structure could be streamlined. The Emergency Management Program Committee is recommending that we adopt the emergency response structure known as the Incident Management System, which is IMS. So IMS originated over 30 years ago in response to challenges presented by large-scale multi-jurisdictional incidents and draws on business and military principles. It provides a standardized approach to emergency management encompassing personnel, facilities, equipment, procedures, and communications operating within a common organizational structure. IMS is endorsed by Emergency Management Ontario and is internationally recognized and used by many emergency responding agencies. Some of the benefits of using IMS include enhanced technical and functional interoperability, integrated communications, standardized terminology, and it's highly flexible and adaptable and can be quickly expanded and contracted based on the changing circumstances. So IMS is based on the understanding that in any and every incident, there are certain management functions that must be carried out regardless of the scale or complexity of the incident. There are 5 key functions within IMS. The first one being command. Command is responsible for managing all responses to an incident. It may consist of a single person or a team, and it is the first and primary organizational component of IMS and to which all other sections report to. Then there's operations, who implements the incident action plan by directing and coordinating all municipal operational responses as well as outside agencies. The third one is planning, and they coordinate the development of each incident action plan and ensures information is shared effectively with all section chiefs and general staff in an efficient planning process. Fourth one is logistics, who provides all supporting resources to implement the incident action plan. These may include facilities, transportation, supplies, fuel, maintenance, equipment, food service, communications, and medical services for responders and personnel. And lastly, you have finance and administration, who provides the financial and cost analysis support to an incident and works closely with the logistics section chief. So here is a breakdown of how IMS would operate within our plan. So the IMS organizational structure builds from the top down, with responsibility initially placed on the incident commander. As need exists, 3 to 4 separate sections can be developed, each with their own responsibilities. So each section would have a primary and alternate section chief, just like we currently have. During the emergency, each section chief has the ability to build their own team of members providing response to the emergency. It's then those team members who report to the section chief, who then provides updates during our to the municipal emergency control group during our next operational meeting. So this chart just outlines the IMS role and who would fill it as the primary and alternate member. And is there a need to go through each individual person? And it's there for you to review. So what is an emergency? An emergency is defined under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act as a situation or impending situation that constitutes a danger of major proportions that could result in serious harm to persons or substantial damage to property, and that is caused by forces of nature, a disease or other health risk, an accident or an act, whether intentional or otherwise. So after reviewing the emergency declaration checklist, the control group may recommend declaring an emergency for several reasons. A few of those reasons may be to activate an evacuation center, to request assistance through the Grey County Mutual Assistance Agreement, or to access possible financial funds through government emergency relief programs. Only the head of council, the lieutenant governor in council, or the premier have the authority to declare an emergency. An emergency declaration may extend to all or part of a geographical area within the municipality. And once the decision to declare is made, the municipality must notify Emergency Management Ontario. So the pictures up there on this screen are just examples of local declared emergencies, which include the Chatsworth flooding in 2016 and the Godrich tornado in 2011. So what are the steps leading to a declared emergency, keeping in mind what the definition of an emergency is, and that not all emergencies may be declared. So within our plan, we do have notification procedures for alerting staff. This flow chart here is kind of just an outline of what steps might happen to the opening of the Emergency Operations Center and convening of the MEC, the Municipal Emergency Control Group. In most situations, it may be the fire chief responding to a scene and then notifying the CEMC or the CAO. It's then between the CEMC and the CAO, we notify the mayor. All three of us have a conversation and decide whether we want to convene the control group or put them on standby. Depending on the situation, we would, if it's decided that we want to convene the control group, we would contact all the necessary staff members and notify them to meet at a specified time and EOC location. Once internal members of the control group have convened and been brought up to speed, outside agencies may be contacted based on need. So what is the role of a counselor? Set out in the plan, the head of council or their designate has the responsibility to declare an emergency to exist, ensure that members of council are advised of the declaration and termination of emergency, and to keep council informed of the emergency situation. As an appendix within our plan is the contact information for each counselor. If there was ever to be an emergency, you would be initially contacted by the head of council or a staff member after our first operational meeting and time permitting. The MECG would keep members updated by copying you on all media releases. And should you be contacted by a member of public, you're asked to follow the instructions set out within the media release, as it will contain the appropriate instructions and contact information. Following the conclusion of an emergency, debriefings will take place with the municipal emergency control group members, and information gathered will be compiled and presented in a post-emergency report to council. As you can imagine, the first few hours of emergency are critical, and the focus of the control group will be on containing the situation, public safety, communications, and much more. And that's it. Are there any questions?
No questions for Brittany? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Your worship, thank you. And not a question, but I just want to say how lucky we are to have you, Brittany. You do a phenomenal job as our CEMC, and thinking of all we've been through in these past 3 and a bit years, it seems like we've been in an emergency just about the whole time. And you're still smiling. So
Thank you.
thank you for being here to lead us, Brittany.
Yes, thank you very much. We were working side by each year for quite a few hours, and I believe we probably have a meeting immediately following this meeting. Thank you. Getting ahead of myself here. The next one is development services, a deeming bylaw request. The recommendation that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford enact a bylaw to deem Lot 11 and Lot 12, Plan 756, not to be lots within a plan of subdivision. We need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Forder. Discussion, questions? I think it was a very straightforward report. It's very simple. A lot is not a lot when it's been deemed not to be. Are you ready to vote? All in favor? That is approved. Thank you. Now we have updates, and I'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor for an update on County Council.
Thank you, Your Worship. And actually, County Council has not met since we last did. Reason being that the FCM concert was this past week. So with that conference in the calendar, County Council has been moved forward. So I don't have anything to report.
Okay. Any other boards or committees to report? Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Grace Oval Conservation Authority Board met last Wednesday, the 24th, and received and accepted draft financial statements for 2022, as well as a financial report for the first quarter of 23. With the major impact of COVID behind us, I'm pleased to say the organization's finances are in good shape. The board agreed to enable its Agricultural Advisory Committee to review and approve landowner grant applications for suitable projects in order to remove real or perceived conflicts of interest by staff. Hopefully it can expedite some as well. The CAO shared that I always want to just say GSCA to shorten things, as everybody knows that's the Grace Oval Conservation Authority, has finally hired a long-needed water resources engineer to assist with watershed management requirements. Thought it was important to mention that for a fee, the GSCA can prepare generic and detailed building envelope natural hazard exclusions. This can be an extremely valuable tool for real estate agents and prospective land buyers to determine the limitations of a property before purchasing. So it can actually be pretty handy. So people trying to buy something and then wanting to do all the analysis afterwards. A lot of people don't know that is readily available. The GSCA has entered into an agreement with the Mewikwedong for the placing of a sweat lodge structure on the Arboretum. This is a great step forward in the relationship building and reconciliation process, as the GSCA has been promoting its managed lands as a location where Indigenous communities can reconnect with the landscape. And finally, just a few upcoming events. The Mewikwedong Indigenous Friendship Center will be hosting a sharing circle at the Haibu Conservation Area on Friday, June 2nd at 10 a.m. Each year in June, a commemorative memorial tree ceremony is held at the GSCA Administration Center to recognize all those who have had a tree planted in their memory. And this year's ceremony will be on June 11th. And finally, the Friends of Haibu are hosting a 50 years of Haibu celebration on Saturday, June 24th, with a barbecue, children's activities, and live music.
Thank you very much. Rob, is there any other? Yes, Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I have an update from the Meaford Public Library. We met last Wednesday and Councillor Greenfield in attendance with me as well. Let's just have a look here. So we reviewed the April variance report. Under the chair's report, the chair attended some governance training. Under CEO and staff reports, the library will retain a summer student for part-time evening and some weekend shifts. Under the library team reports, the library team has been very busy with a whole bunch of different activities as it is an active community hub. The Canada Film Day was a huge success and films were shown in every room and there was quite a high attendance rate with popcorn in the works. The income tax clinics were very popular and successful, and through that program, 59 people were able to complete their taxes. Which was very cool. The working lunches in partnership with the Meaford Chamber of Commerce have been doing very well and are receiving fantastic feedback, and a little bit more information on that coming up. The STEM workshops, particularly the scientist and school program, have also been getting tons of positive feedback. In April, there were 3 school class visits to the library, hosting a total of 70 students. Some key April stats with regards to the Meaford Public Library. Public computer logins increased from 452 in April last year to 658 this year. Library visits have almost doubled in 1 year, from 4,300 last April to 9,500 this April, and that is great. With regards to outreach, the Meaford Public Library has done a number of things. They recently hosted the Meaford Community Living Group, providing story readings and crafts. There was a collaboration and connections were made with other local organizations at the Meaford Collaborative Partners meeting. Personalized book selections were provided for the Meaford Long-Term Care Center residents, and the library contributed to Meaford Volunteer Appreciation meetings and the 50+ Lifestyle and Leisure Connections Fair organized by the municipality. And the library also attended the Georgian Bay Youth Roots meeting and participated in customer service excellence meetings with other municipal departments. With regards to committee reports, the library board policy update review and library rules of conduct were discussed. Meeting room policies and the upcoming CEO performance review were also discussed. The Friends of the Meaford Library reported a fantastic opening weekend for the Net Shed, and apparently there were people lining up before opening, which was great, and they are still actively collecting book donations. With regards to the Owen Sound North Grey Union Public Library, the number of library card holders in Meaford have increased from 621 to 798 compared to the previous year. The Ontario Libraries Working Group is focusing on diversity and inclusion goals. There is also a book vending machine project that is progressing pretty well. There are 2 book vending machines that were donated from Wellington County, and they are planned for Georgian Bluffs and Chatsworth. New resources, including decodable books and World Book early learning tools, have been added to make reading easier for children. And the library also has an ongoing partnership with CBC Radio Canada for virtual author talks. And just some highlights with regards to upcoming events at the Meaford Public Library. We do have story time with children's author Harriet Alida Lai, and that's on Saturday, June 17th at 10:30 a.m. Join for a story time and a craft session with author Harriet Alida Lai as she shares her book, Surge the Snail Without a Shell. There is also the Creative Kids Connect Mindfulness, which is on Tuesday, June 6th. And 13th and 20th, all at 3:30 p.m. And instructor Barbara Rosen will guide participants aged 8 and above in exploring mindfulness, body awareness, and meditation. There is also the Bike Canada Event for Life, which is on Tuesday, June 20th at 1:30. Space is limited for this, so registration is required in advance. So join Nikki Prevost, Tim and Melanie Johns as they share their inspiring journey of cycling across Canada and the preparations behind their events for life. Next is kind of a cool thing. It's called the Walk to Mordor for all the, I was going to say Game of Thrones, but that's not right. That's the other one. I apologize. So the Lord of the Rings. So that's on Wednesday, June 21st, until Saturday, September 2nd. So you can be registered for part of a challenge. And the question is, can you walk the 2,800 kilometers, which is the distance from the Shire to Mordor, participate in the Fellowship Movement Challenge? You track your steps or kilometers and you submit them weekly to compete for a Middle Earth prize pack. That sounds pretty cool. There is also yoga and literacy for kids coming up on Saturday, June 3rd, and explore mindful movement, meditation, songs, and activities with Jenna. And you can bring a yoga mat or beach towel. My children have done that several times, and that is a fantastic workshop. There are also continuing working lunches with the Meaford Chamber of Commerce, Mondays at 1 o'clock. And registration is advanced because there is limited space available. Improve your business skills with tips from LinkedIn Learning, online courses, and local experts. Discuss strategies and network with other participants. June's topics include a variety of different marketing strategies for business. And finally, America, my goodness. Amazing Reads Canada. It's been a little bit of a long afternoon for us. Amazing Reads Canada, which is going on from now until Saturday, September 2nd. Pick up a passport from the library and read your way across Canada. Each province and territory features a book or a challenge, and you can receive a ballot for each book read, and you have a chance to win some prizes. More information on these and other events, you can visit the Meaford Library at meaford.ca/library, or you can contact the library at 519-538-3500, or better yet, pop on into the library and speak to the amazing staff that make this such an important community hub. And unless Councillor Greenfield has anything else to offer, that's all I have to report on the MPL.
Woo, is that all? Any other boards or committees? Okay, it's we need a motion to move out of committee of the whole at this point, moved by Councillor Bartley, second by Councillor Bell. We are moving out of committee of the whole at 4:44 p.m. There used to be a rule that you couldn't run a council meeting over, how long is it? Is it 4 hours?
3 hours, 30 minutes. So we've just gone a bit over that. So we can perhaps should pass a motion to extend, but we're pretty close to the end. So I'm not too worried about it.
Let's barrel through here and get it done. Councillor motions, and first we have I guess a motion for decision, actually. Is there any notice of motion first? No, I see none. Okay, so we have Councillor Bartley, your motion. Do you want to speak to it and move it?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. In the matter of saving time, I won't read the whole motion. It's there in black and white. I will read the last sentence. Therefore, be resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby direct staff to bring forward a report detailing how the draft revenues and building and planning services in the 2023 operating budget were calculated.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions for Councillor Bartley?
Yeah, we need to move.
Oh, seconded, sorry, you seconded by you. Any questions, Councillor Bell? Oh, okay. Well, it was all right. Are you ready to vote then? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Next, adoption of minutes, the council meeting of May 8, May 9, and May 15. Need a motion do we for that as well? Okay, the Councillor Greenfield and Deputy Mayor. Any errors or omissions in these? Otherwise, all in favor? And that is approved. Thank you. Special council meeting, the Wellbeing Bursary Program minutes from May the 15th. Can we accept, okay, do we need a separate vote for that? Okay. We've done them all together, fine. Anything from the communications agenda? No? Then we have a confirming bylaw. And the recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2023-31 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford at its regular and special meetings held in the month of May 2023 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All in favor? Do we have to put that on as all in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. And I now declare the meeting adjourned.